Communities Scrutiny Committee. I'm Councillor Andrew Key, the Chairman of the committee. The Vice Chairman, Councillor Paul Skinner, has given his apologies for this morning's meeting, and so we need a Vice Chairman for a later item on the agenda, and I need therefore to call upon someone to stand in just for this meeting. I'd like to nominate Councillor Jackie Brockway, if that's all right with you, Jackie. Do we have a seconder, please? Councillor Lee, and could all the councillors show? Thank you. Yes, thank you, Jackie. Now, since it's a very warm day, if gentlemen would like to remove ties and jackets, or ladies, if you have a tie on, do feel free to do so. I've not put mine on. It's very warm in here this morning. We need to be able to concentrate. Can I remind you that the audio-visual feed of this formal public meeting is being broadcasted live via the County Council's website. And with this in mind, I'd like to welcome members of the public who are watching this live. And as the meeting is being streamed in the usual way, I'd like to remind you that all your comments will remain accessible online and can be reported by the media. I'd like to begin with a health and safety announcement. There's no fire drill planned this morning. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, we need to leave the council chamber through the rear doors and leave the building through the reception into the front car park and wait there. Could I remind you to make sure your mobile, laptop and iPad, if you have any of those, are on silent for the duration of the meeting. The hearing loop is activated. Requests to speak will be collated by the Vice Chairman, and when invited to speak, you should press your button on the microphone unit to make it live, then press it again to finish your contribution. So, item 1, we'll go to Emily for apologies and replacement councillors.
Thank you, Chairman. We've received apologies from Councillors Austin, Danny, Pepper, Skinner and Sneath.
Thank you. Any more? Okay. So, declarations of councillors' interest, item 2. Do any members wish to declare an interest? I have a pecuniary interest in item 12, the antisocial behaviour item, since my wife is an antisocial behaviour officer. Item 3, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 25th of June 2024. This item is to approve and sign the minutes of our last meeting held on that date as a correct record. The minutes are on pages 7 to 17 of the agenda pack. So could I have a proposer, please, to accept the minutes? Councillor Clark, seconder, please. Councillor Mrs. Clark. All those in favour? Anyone against? Any abstentions? Councillor Gray wasn't here, I think. Thank you. So, announcements by the Chairman, Executive Councillors and Lead Officers, item 4. It's a very busy agenda today. We're trying not to let a backlog build up of items, so if officers could be reminded to take their reports as read by the committee and only summarise key points and what support and input is required by us. Members are also reminded of the importance of succinct questions and contributions. As Councillor Lee.
Just wanted to make it known to you, Chair. I have mentioned it. I have to leave around about 12 o'clock. I'm sorry. I've got another appointment. That's
another reason to crack on. As I said last time, can we have questions, please, that are shorter than the answers? And I am intending to have a 10-minute comfort break before item 10. Assuming we keep to time. So, Executive Councillor announcements. Lindsay, Councillor Corey.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one. I just wanted to say that we had a fantastic set of concerts at the Lincoln Castle in June and the beginning of July. We had just under 28,000 people come in to enjoy the delights of Lincoln Castle. And I know from speaking anecdotally to businesses in the Bailgate area and down the High Street in Lincoln that they also enjoyed an uplift in business, and I know some hotels and B&Bs also enjoyed an uplift in business. So this is just one of the things that Lincolnshire County Council can do in supporting businesses and creating a really nice cultural offer. So I want to thank the team that are here for delivering that. Thank you.
Thank you. I haven't been this year, but I have been in the past, and they're fabulous. So brilliant. Well done. So do we have any more announcements from any of the other executive councillors? No. Nobody online. And any announcements from senior officers, please? No, good. Okay, we'll crack on then. So item 5 is the annual update on grant funding for Citizens Advice Lincolnshire. This report is on pages 19 to 36 of the agenda pack and presents the annual update on grant funding to Citizens Advice Lincolnshire. The actions required by this committee are to review the report and seek assurance on the improving picture of Citizens Advice Lincolnshire performance against a backdrop of increasing need. Consider the national trends and concerns with regards to the increasing financial vulnerability and decreasing financial resilience of citizens, including those who've never sought help from the service previously. And note the new grant funding agreement with them to continue the Citizens Advice services across Lincolnshire for a further period of 3 years between the 1st of April this year and the 31st of March 2027, commencing at a value of £295,236 from the 1st of April this year and increasing annually in line with the national living wage. The report will be presented by Anne-Marie Scott, Assistant Director, Prevention and Early Intervention. And also in attendance we have, I haven't checked, Emma, Jenny and Simon. So over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Jenny and Simon are both Chief Executives of 2 of the Citizens Advice offices and are also happy to answer any specific questions that the committee may have. So, as members are aware, LCC provides core grant funding to Citizens Advice Lincolnshire. This report provides a summary looking back at the previous financial year when the grant value was at £278,000. So there are 3 Citizens Advice branches across the county, each being a separately constituted charity, and they all have their own service models. Branches receive funding from LCC, but also from districts and from a number of other funding sources, specialist contracts and specific projects. So nationally in the last year, we've seen a high proportion of adults in certain groups struggling financially compared to the previous year. These people are financially vulnerable, and it makes Citizens Advice important in helping people to access support at an early point to maintain their independence and help prevent escalation to crisis, which can lead to reliance on other statutory services such as social care. The nature of the problem debt seen has been predominantly around energy debt, housing debt and council tax arrears, with over half the people seen by Citizens Advice nationally being in a negative budget. This means that their income is not enough to cover their essential outgoings. Refer members to the report and Table 1. This provides data specifically for Lincolnshire for the last 6 years. The number of advice line calls answered has increased on the previous year, along with the number of unique clients accessing the service, which now stands at over 11,000. There's also been an increase in the number of issues individuals present with. So this can mean that Citizens Advice need to spend more time with individuals to support their complexity of their situation. So the high demand and the high volume and the complexity mean that sometimes the offices are challenged in being able to answer all of the calls that are made to the advice line. In terms of client feedback, this suggests services are meeting residents' needs. High numbers of people continue to recommend the service, and 2 of the 3 branches perform equal to or above Citizens Advice national benchmark levels. In terms of volunteers, each branch does have its own model. There were 134 volunteers active across the county. The level of training required does mean that this requires a significant commitment by those volunteers, so it can always be challenging to find people with the right level of skill and time and commitment to provide those roles. Finally, looking forward to the future, as in the recommendation, a new 3-year grant funding has been put in place. That commenced on the 1st of April. This offers a new and ongoing opportunity for LCC, along with district councils who also fund, to align reporting requirements and collectively support opportunities for closer collaboration and service development. The 3-year commitment also gives citizens advice of greater certainty, which in turn supports them to bid for longer term funding opportunities from other sources which are not usually available to cover core costs. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that succinct report. Thank you. Right, can we have some questions, please? Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep them brief and quick. Thank you for the report. Excellent report. It gives us a lot of detail, and I can see that you're doing a superb job, and it is very difficult. The two things that I would like to ask you are, since we've now got more people with low financial resilience, are you able to record, or are you aware of the new cases of the people who were managing and who have not contacted you before but are now finding low financial resilience and need advice, particularly around debt? And the other question I have is, you did touch on it, you alluded to it, and from a similar background, I know that the time taken to deal with complex cases, and it won't just be one issue that people have, it'll be several. Could you just give us an idea or a flavour of the actual amount of time taken to help a person from beginning to end? I'm assuming that won't just be days, it could actually be weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. I think perhaps our Citizens Advice colleagues would be best placed to answer that.
Hello, I'm Jenny. So in response to your first question, can we track the new clients that are coming to us who haven't been to us before? I'm sure we can have a look at our data to see if we can have a look at that. Normally, what we would do if clients come to us, we will close a client's case after X amount of time, depending on the level of that case. So it could be after 3 months. And then they might come back to us. We do have postcodes of clients, etc. But we do have the facility to pull off a lot of reports, so we could look at that as a percentage of those clients coming back to, or coming to us, those new clients coming to us because of, you know, the cost of living crisis, etc., and their low resilience. So certainly can have a look at that for you. And secondly, the time it takes from sort of the start to end. Obviously, it depends on the complexity of the cases. To an extent, we would say that a debt case could take on average 3 months. It depends on how many creditors are involved in that case and how complex that case is, because it could be a bankruptcy, it could be a debt relief order, and they all take a different amount of time, and every person is unique and every person's situation is different. But if we think about income maximisation and disability benefits, sometimes we might not know the outcome of that for a year. And we would track that, and we would keep that case open until we knew the outcome of that situation and the income that we've gained for that client. So it is a bit of how long is a piece of string, because every case is different and every case is unique. But I hope that that helps a little bit to understand the length of time involved.
Thank you. The next speaker is Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't really got a question. It's more a supportive comment or two. Great report. Obviously, you're doing lots of work through the 3 groups, and I only wish we could maybe support you more financially, that you could help more people. Thank you.
Okay, just before we go on to Will's next, can I just ask you about the number of calls that are answered? Because this must be frustrating for you. It is 42%, as it says on here. Do you know anything about whether, if people don't get through the first time, whether they subsequently keep trying? Is there any record of, do you ask people, or is there any way of knowing if these people do eventually get through? Thank you.
So I might refer to Simon in a minute, but we do have quite a good statistical information around that. And we do know if a client is unique and they've called only once, or if they've had to call again. So when we look at our statistics for calls for the month, for example, we can tell the percentage of clients that have called back that second time to try and get through. And obviously, the more calls you aim to answer, the less people are going to have to call twice, and that percentage drops and improves all the time. So the more people we can get answering the phone and the better response rate we can get, that percentage of clients calling a second time does drop. But yeah, we do have the statistics on that.
And so what roughly are they, would you say? Not going to hold you to it, but...
Do not hold me to it, but I would say it's around about 1.4.
So I think people call, about 1.5 times on average. I think in terms of callers, it's like 55% around there, maybe in terms of callers that we answer. And it's fair to say people don't stay on very, very long either. So kind of less than a minute, they might hang up and call again. So it's very difficult for us to be available for every call as soon as they call. So.
Do you have a system whereby they know if it's a queuing system, like when you ring the doctors?
Yes. So, people wait in a queue. We have all got different models. I mean, I think we use a voicemail system as well that kicks in after a certain period of time so that we can get back to people in less busy times. So we're all using kind of different approaches to try and best beat that demand as well as we can.
If I could just add to that as well, though, but we do learn from each other. So if we'll meet and we'll talk about those systems, and that we'll learn and share that, and so adapt our models so that we're aiming for the best.
That's very reassuring. Thank you, Will.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. Anne-Marie, thank you very much for the report. And thank you to the Citizens Advice and your volunteers for the tremendous work that you're clearly doing. It's very much needed. I was just curious, Mr. Chairman, about some of the stats and the tables on pages 24 and 25. So, for instance, on page 24, the number of clients supported in relation to housing benefit has reduced considerably from 881 to 508. And I just wondered why, because there was clearly a trend there to be increasing. And a similar question on page 25, the number of clients supported in relation to universal credit, again, from over 5,000 to less than 3,500. Again, I was just wondering why there must be a reason for that trend when you've been constantly increasing, steadily increasing, sadly, but now suddenly a decrease. I just wondered if there's some clarification for that, please.
I can probably help with some general there and pass to Citizens Advice colleague for their specific, but housing benefit is now in effect being reduced. People are transferring on to universal credit, so you would expect to see less new claimants coming for housing benefit. In terms of universal credit, again, as people move on to universal credit, they stay on it generally then, but if maybe something that wish to add from colleagues directly.
Yes, I would agree with that. But what I'd also like to say is we are expecting to see an increase in universal credit as people move from tax credits to universal credit through what's called a managed migration, and that's already commenced. We are expecting to see an increase in people coming to us for help and support with universal credit yet again. So it, obviously it does flux dependent on the external environment and the political situation.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you, Chair. As we said earlier, this is one of the things I've always been really interested in. This is a fantastic report, Emma, thank you. It's just what I'd expect from you, but it's really good. And I want to give a shout out here as well to Francesca, who does our weekly drop-in at Ermine Library for the Citizens Advice. There is always a queue, and I take all sorts of people there with all sorts of problems, and do you know what? They're just so good, and it just makes such a difference to the community that I represent. So thank you. I wanted to ask about the percentage of calls that are answered now. I was looking in it. I can't see it. I've obviously just missed it. Because from memory, about a year ago, it was like just under 40%, about 36 or 38 or something. So am I right in thinking that you're answering a greater proportion of them now? The second point I want to make is that I think it's really good that we gave them a 3-year deal, LCC, but we didn't improve the amount of funding that we gave them very much. I think the increase was 17k over, and it had been frozen for about 4 years or something like that. And the chair of this committee made the same point as I made on that. And I just think that when this council, and I want to say it now publicly, this council, as of February, had put an extra 20 million into highways funding. That's roads and potholes. And we've got an underspend coming to council in September, and there's about another 9. And again, highways and potholes. But for me, I would have made up that core funding, because I think we were talking to what they'd lost over those years was hundreds of thousands, not millions. And for me, people will always come before roads and potholes. And I've campaigned on this, and I will keep campaigning. And next February, I will stand up in this chamber and I will say we should give some extra funding to Citizens Advice. We should increase the core amount that we gave them, because they lost so much over 4 to 5 years. So I wanted to make that point. I think it's really important. We can pat ourselves on the back for giving them a 3-year deal, but actually I think we only increased their funding by 17k, and it had been frozen for 4 or 5 years, and that is simply not good enough. People matter more than potholes. I'm sorry, but they do. But great report, great to see the great work that you're doing, and I'll keep shouting out for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Now, just another point from me. The resolution rate for mid-links is lower, and this is my area where I represent, is lower than the others. Is there any explanation for that? Thank you.
So Louise isn't here from Mid-Lincolnshire, but we did speak about this beforehand. So I think the main reason is in terms of the way that they answer their phones, they do it as part of a national group. So that helps them to answer more calls. Basically, it increases the capacity because you're sharing it with other offices across the country. So I think there is a benefit there for clients in Mid-Lincolnshire. However, what that does mean is that the clients that you might be answering the phone to are spread across the country. So, and the service that they may get elsewhere in the country is probably not as good as we're getting in Lincolnshire. So, and some of the inner city areas, it maybe they can't get face-to-face appointments and the like in the same way that we do, that we offer. So, because the feedback is shared across all those services, we think that is probably the reason that it's a lower resolution rate. So basically, it's because it's everybody that they would have helped.
Thank you, Karen.
I'm not going to get back on my soapbox. No, can you just tell me, are you answering a greater percentage of calls than you were a year ago? Because I've obviously read this, but not read it and got that information.
So I think it's on that page 24, and the third row is percentage of calls answered. So in 22-23 it was 33%, and it's 42% in 23-24. We have answered more calls. I think what I would say as well is obviously 22-23 and 21-22. It was more, that was how people were accessing our services. We didn't have the, but as we've kind of reopened our face-to-face, we're obviously having to juggle the need to help people face-to-face as well as answer calls. So.
Thank you. Do we have any more questions? No. Okay. Right, so our proposal then is that this committee has been assured on the improving picture of Citizens Advice Lincolnshire performance against a backdrop of increasing need. We've considered the national trends and concerns with regard to increasing financial vulnerability and decreasing financial resilience of citizens, including those who've never sought help from services previously. And we note the new grant funding agreement with Citizens Advice to continue the services across Lincolnshire for a further period of 3 years between the 1st of April this year and the 31st of March 2027, commencing at a value of 295,236 from this year and increasing annually in line with the national living wage. And obviously we've noted Karen's point.
I'd like it noted for the record, please, that in February, when we consider our annual budget, that the loss of income over the 4 years or however long it was that the budget was frozen, that is in some way compensated for, and that we increase the amount of funding that we give for Citizens Advice. And I'd like that noted for the record, please.
Yeah, thank you, Emily. You can record that as a comment, can't you? Thank you. So, is everybody in agreement with that? Please show. Thank you. Lovely. Right, item 6 the lease agreement for operational vehicles. This is with the Fire and Rescue Service. This report was emailed to members of the committee on the 24th of this month. This item is for scrutiny prior to a decision on the proposal by 2 executive councillors and is planned between the 5th and 30th of August this year. So we are required to consider the attached report and determine whether the committee supports the recommendations of the Executive Councillor for Fire and Rescue and Cultural Services as set out in the report, and agree any additional comments that we want to pass on to the Executive Councillor in relation to this item. And she's obviously here, so she can hear them as well. So we're going to have this from Mark and Steve, is it? Yes, both of you. Yep, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you, Councillor Key. I'll take the lead on there, and obviously between myself and Steve we can answer any of the questions that come through. So yeah, a little bit of the background of the reason for the paper. So this is to support our operational response model, and just to put this into context, what we're focusing on here is operational response vehicles that are not fire engines and specialist large vehicles that people probably traditionally see driving around the county. To ensure that we've got an adequate response model, we require our officers to respond to incidents that provide dedicated incident command skills. They provide additional skills such as fire investigation, hazmat materials, environmental support, fire protection response, or any other additional tactical and strategic lead roles to ensure that any operational incident is managed safely and appropriately for whatever the risks are involved. To ensure that we provide a 24/7 response to run 65 days a year, they require operational response vehicles, which has always been in being since the inceptions of fire and rescue services, really. And we come to a position this year where our current provider, how we provide these vehicles through a lease scheme, the contract has come up for renewal. We have extended it for an additional year to ensure that we can look at best value in regards to future procurement. This paper sets out a recommendation to carry on with an existing lease scheme. However, it's just recognising that the cost of value of the operational response vehicles have increased since the last time the lease was negotiated, and it's increased from around £3,766 per year per vehicle up to just over £6,138 per vehicle. So the proposal is that we've done the value for money exercise. We looked at options whether we looked at going to capitalise this programme, recognising if we went down that route, that would require just over a £1 million investment through capital as a lump sum. However, by continuing with a lease scheme, over a 4-year period, the cost would be around £800,000 over a 4-year period, which felt was far more sustainable in regards to the financial climate. The other additional costs that we've factored into is that there will be a small increase in capital costs for the fitting and refitting of the blue lights and 2 tones that each vehicle is required by law to ensure that they can move through traffic at a safe and speedy manner to ensure that they get to the operational instance in good time. That will be a one-off cost over the 4-year period as the vehicles get replaced. Insurance of vehicles have also included slightly, but that's just in line with inflationary costs. So in regards to financial commitments, we would be looking at an additional £74,700 increase in revenue budget year on year, and then a one-off cost of an additional £34,000 within the capital programme, which would be able to be, the capital be absorbed within the existing capital programme that we've had. And the other minor costs will be as we are looking to ensure that we've got a standardisation of stowage within the vehicles for all the personal protective equipment and other ancillary equipment that our officers are required, which does point to, it gives a specific specification of those vehicles. And I think the final significant change in regards to this proposal is historically we've been securing vehicles, and the officers have had an ability to choose from a suite of vehicles that ensures that it suits their needs in regards to operational response. What we've looked at now is looking at sector best practice and sector standardisation, and we've got a very clear standard of one single standard of vehicle, which would mean that officers will be provided with the same vehicle across all roles. That will also give us the ability to monitor and maintain our fleet in a far more cost-effective way, and being able to rotate the fleet depending on usage and maintenance and wear and tear on an annual basis to ensure that we get the best use of those vehicles. So there will be one single vehicle fleet that will be provided to all officers. And that's the headlines of the report. Open for questions.
Thank you, Mark. Okay, anyone got any questions for Mark? Well, Mike. Okay, you go first, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. When I was in business, we did some stats regarding leasing as opposed to purchase. Presumably you've done the same set of figures. Comparing the two, what is the most financially beneficial for the council?
So we have done that figures. I mean, really extending it for long term, if it was long term, and when we're talking long term, we're talking about at least a 12-year period. It would take over 12 years before capital became more financially viable. But what we're recognising within that 12-year period, there's going to be a significant change in regards to vehicle requirements. There's going to be a change in technologies, particularly in regards to environmentally friendly engine choices. We know that the internal combustion engine won't be available from 2030. So if we went to capital, that would probably lock us into a position where we wouldn't be able to have the flexibility of changing the vehicles to suit the new technologies. So yes, technically, financially, it would take over 12 years, and capital probably would be more financially viable. However, the amount of change that's going to be upon us within those 12 years' time, it wouldn't give us the ability to be able to flex and to be able to look at other financially viable options.
Thank you for that, clearing up the situation.
Thank you, Mike. Can I just ask you, Mark, the fitting of the blues and twos, £170,000, that's, if I've worked it out right, £5,000 each. Just for me, who doesn't know anything about how much things are like that, that seems a lot of money to fit a blue light. So there must be more to it.
Yeah, it is quite a specialist piece of work, that there's only a limited amount of providers that are able to give us that service. So all of the blue lights and the two-tones are against a national blue light standard that ensures that there's a complete 360 visibility in all conditions, whether it's either bright sunlight or in nighttime hours. There's also the specialist in lighting system have various colour codings, depending whether you're travelling through moving traffic or whether you are parked on the side of the road, and the ability to create a safe scene in regards to the different types of lighting available. Again, the two-tone system, again, has variable audible devices that enables us to go through traffic, whether it's either standing traffic, and there's multiple vehicles that have two tones, that ensures that it's enables to the public can have the best opportunity to hear and see us. And then they all have to be fitted covertly within the vehicle, so they can't be easily visible when they're not in use for the general public, because then that's a safety and security issue for these vehicles. So there's an awful lot of work to be honest with, is a lot of removing an awful lot of panelling and stripping out the cars quite significantly to ensure that it is absolutely covert. But what we are doing is that we will be reaching out to the limited amount of suppliers and looking at the best value to ensure that we can get that at the most premium price for us.
Do we have someone in Lincolnshire who does that, do you know?
So currently, Lindham's are our provider. that fit them. They also do our servicing and maintenance, so actually they know the specifications for emergency services. They have the contract that we awarded to them for our servicing for all of our fleet last year, so they do have the that specific knowledge in regards to the emergency services on that.
Thank you, Mark. Jackie.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the report. It's very interesting, actually. It's perfectly normal for the emergency services to have a single vehicle type. I mean, the police do it, the first responders do it, so it's reasonable that you should do it. But will care be taken to cater for the fact that people are different sizes? I mean, we all buy different cars because they suit us and fit us, but it's obviously successful in the other services. So is that a consideration? Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor Brockway. We've done an EQIA, Equality Impact Assessment, to ensure that those vehicles will be future-proofed for the rotation of officers as and when. So we've got the confidence that as and when officers either move roles or they retire or they leave the service, that vehicle will be absolutely fit for purpose for anybody else to take on.
Okay, thank you. Just another question from me then. How many miles roughly would one of these vehicles do in a year, would you say?
So the current lease agreement is an 80,000 mile over 4 years. So we do look at managing this to approximately 20,000 miles per year. So that links into the benefit of us having a single provider. So we will be monitoring that on a year-by-year basis. And if there are any vehicles that are looking at they are going to be coming near that, then we have the ability to rotate that to an area that probably have less activity to ensure that we can manage that mileage within the contract.
And that's another benefit of them all being the same, of course.
Absolutely,
What you said. Yeah, I understand. And what happens to them at the end of the lease period? Do you know? Are they? Can we buy them, or what happens to them?
Yeah, so normally they would just go back to the lease provider, but there is always that option for a purchase at the end of the lease agreement. So again, we will have that flexibility to look at that if there is a genuine business and operational response need for those vehicles to be kept within the organisation. But yes, we would have that option at the end of the lease agreement.
Any more questions? No. So I propose that the committee supports the recommendations to the Executive Councillor for Fire and Rescue and Cultural Services. So can we just have a vote on that, please? Jackie, Karen seconded it, all in favour. Are there any extra comments that we want to pass to the Executive on this item? I haven't heard anything particular, I don't think. We're all happy with the report. Yeah, everybody's nodding. That's it then. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. Well, the next item, item 7, is the Statement of Assurance from the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Service. It's on pages 37 to 57 of the agenda pack and sets out their annual Statement of Assurance for 23-24 on financial, governance and operational matters. We're required to review and comment on the report, and it's going to be presented by Mark and Steve again. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Yeah, so again, a little bit of background of the purpose of the Statement of Assurance. This is a statutory requirement for all fire and rescue services to produce this annual statement that links into the National Fire and Rescue's framework. And this document will be publicly available on the website, and it really, as you said, just gives an overview of our governance in regards to financial and operational matters for the year 23 to 24. I will take that everybody's read, so I'm not going to go into the details of the report, but the outcome of the report just give an overview strategically of Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue and in the context of Lincolnshire as a county. It gives an overview in regards to how our operational response assets are made up to ensure that we can meet our statutory duties. And then it does link in regards to the financial arrangements that we've had for the year 2023-24, which is a summary of the Lincolnshire County Council Statement of Accounts that do get published on an annual basis. In regards to the value for money, last year we did come in within 0.3% tolerance within our revenue budget with a slight overspend of 82,000. In regards to the operational elements within the Statement of Assurance, it highlights that actually our IRMP, our Integrated Risk Management Plan, which is our statutory document, which gives us a strategic overview of how we would deliver our services over a 4-year period. Within this year was the final year of the existing IRMP, and within last year we spent a lot of the time of developing a new Community Risk Management Plan, the CRMP, which sets out the next 4 years' strategic objectives. We do mention about collaboration. The reason that's stated in there because we have a statutory duty under the Police and Crime Commissioners Act as a duty to collaborate with Blue Light partners and other partners. So it gives an overview of some of the key areas that we have engaged in collaboration over the last 12 months. And then the Statement of Assurance just pick up onto some high-level performance areas, particularly in regards to how we've reduced the fires and their consequences, and regards to how we've responded to road traffic collisions. Within our annual service plan, we've reflected and focused on this called a continuous improvement plan. We set ourselves 12 service priorities that are outlined within the Statement of Assurance, and they are under the headlines of the 7 key objectives that are linked within our Integrated Risk Management Plan. Within the report, there is a narrative under each priority that gives some headlines on how we've progressed of those over the last 12 months. And then the final part, or the penultimate part of the report does give some more further detailed narrative on our key strategic achievements, particularly in regards to response. One of the areas that we wanted to pick up on is that we have started a review of our operational response model of our whole-time duty systems. Last year, it was a key area where we changed the duty pattern within Sleaford Fire Station to enhance our operational response model. Within prevention and protection, we've made some significant improvements in regards to ensuring we've got a 24-hour response for ensuring we can respond to complaints and non-compliance within fire safety legislation. And we've increased our fire protection capabilities to ensure that we're being able to respond to the His Majesty's Inspectorate recommendations. And within organisational support, again, as I touched on, we have been focusing on the development of our Community Risk Management Plan, but we've also delivered on some key elements, such as some new fire hoods. Fire hoods is a really important part of keeping our firefighters safe. We're one of the first services to be able to provide a standard of fire hoods that mitigate the contaminants risk that has been growing. These are normally only provided for our fire behaviour instructors, but we've issued these out to all operational firefighters because we recognise that contaminants is a growing and emerging risk within the fire sector. We've been very much focused on our people over the last 12 months, again recognising a lot of the recommendations that have come nationally from His Majesty's Inspectorate, and we've done some significant development in regards to our culture and our development of equality, diversity and inclusion, and we've also been linking in regards to leadership and development programme, and there's been an improvement in regards to how we vet our staff throughout the whole of the fire service, and that's linked into the Rehabilitation of Offenders Act that was being introduced that enables us to have DBS checks at the required level across Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, and that is being rolled out for this year and it is moving at pace. And then the final area is more to do about the future service planning, so it's just reminding everybody what our 15 strategic priorities are for this current year, and that's linked into our new 4 pillars that we group within safer communities, service delivery, value for money and people. And if it's okay, Councillor, I'll pause at that point.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. Lindsay.
Thank you, Chairman. I want to thank the Chief Fire Officer and through the Chief Fire Officer, the whole service. Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue is a proud service of Lincolnshire County Council. and the amazing work that the service has done on our behalf over the past 12 months. We are a predominantly rural fire and rescue service. About 75% of our firefighter establishment is retained. And Chairman, you attended Billinghay Fire Station yesterday evening, and you understand the challenges of delivering fire and rescue services in a rural community. So thank you again, Mark and the whole team, and I look forward to questions. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we're all very proud to have you as part of our organisation. I certainly am. But we're here to hold you account, of course, and we will do. I was very impressed at Billinghay last night. You know, we've got some fantastic people working in the organisation, and they were telling me about lives that they had saved. And really, you can't put a price on that, can you? I was quite humbled, really, to be hearing, you know, their stories. So, but we will hold you to account this morning. So let's have some questions. Nick first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark and Steve, for this excellent report. They're always excellent, your reports, and enjoy reading them. You touched briefly on your previous paper about technology, and while I've read this paper and I was looking under priority 12, I was wondering whether or not you were going to be able to develop further and afford the use of technology which will allow virtual training. I have seen something recently on TV that was really impressive, and I immediately thought of you and wondered if you were going to be able to take advantage of that in the future or near future, so that it will enable training to take place in a room as opposed to in an actual room where a fire is actually taking place. Thank you.
No, thank you. That's a really good question. It is a really interesting and fascinating development within the fire sector. Virtual reality training, it is definitely a growing area. Currently what we have at Waddington Training Centre, we have a system called XVR that enables us to train our incident commanders on realistic scenarios that we do develop, and it is a virtual reality system that we can test our incident commanders' decision-making process and it is quite amazing how realistic they can develop those programs. But I also agree that actually that technology is growing and is developing rapidly, and is something that we are continually monitoring. And as and when we get to a position where we want to review our current systems to take advantage of the emerging technologies, then we will look at a business case to be bringing forward. I think it is although we have it at Waddington Training Centre, it would be our ambition to be able to have that to be far more mobile, so we can reach out to all of our stations, because as Councillor Corey has mentioned, we have 38 fire stations. 29 of those are dedicated on-call stations, and they are there on their stations serving their communities, and it's more difficult for them to come to Waddington on a day-by-day basis. So we would like to develop that so we can actually go out to those stations and deliver that really valuable service.
Thank you. I noticed there is an update on the Waddington Training Centre as one of our future items. It might be useful if members of the committee could visit the centres, Mark, before that comes on the agenda.
Thanks to Councillor. I would really welcome that, and absolutely we can arrange for an invitation and a date to suit all councillors, because I absolutely agree it would be really valuable for people to actually see the site that we've got and actually and to recognise the breadth of service that's provided within that Waddington Training Centre.
I mean, I visited there many years ago, and I'm sure it's improved a lot since then, but it was impressive then. But it would help us in our discussions if we could go first and then make sure we get that item on the agenda, Emily, for later in the year, so that we can see what's going on there, because we all drive past it, but there's a lot behind there, I know. Lovely. Right, Karen, I think you were next.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be very interested in visiting. If we had some consultation with councillors before we set the date, so that as many of us can make it as possible, that'd be really helpful.
Maybe a suggestion of a couple of dates, perhaps.
Yeah, 2 or 3.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, great report. Thank you. And I think you know, my support for the fire service is always there. I was really pleased to hear what you said about the helmets and the contaminants, because I can remember campaigning around that going back to 2017, 2018, and it's something that is a really big it's a worry, isn't it? So pleased to hear that. I was just looking on page 42, the bit about value for money and where you overspent, and it was about as a result of the flooding. And, you know, I'm really proud that this council put extra money into supporting flooding and preventing flooding and mitigating it and helping people afterwards. And I just hope that there's been calls for as long as I can remember again for flooding to be made a statutory duty. And I hope with the new government that we might actually get it. And then I'm not so sure after the news yesterday about the holes in the money, but hopefully there might be some extra funding, and because it's very much needed, isn't it? And flooding is only going to get worse, and the costs are only going to get greater. So, once again, on my soapbox, it's got to be a statutory duty, and it's got to be separately and properly funded. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your comments. Absolutely appreciated and welcomed. If I can just absolutely. I think what you touched on in regards to the flooding, we know that the direction of travel nationally is that there is over last 10 years a significant increase in non-fire related incidents that we are attending. Lincolnshire is no different in that trend, and what I mean by that we are attending more incidents such as flooding, such as specialist rescues, such as medical response. That is our growing business. Absolutely, and as I said, Lincolnshire is no different in regards to those trends. But I was just, if it's okay, just to bring Steve in briefly, because I think the contaminants agenda is really important, and Steve's leading on a national project in regards to the development of the future of our personal protective equipment that has the contaminants agenda at the forefront of it.
Yeah, thanks for that. It's an international risk for firefighters. The World Health Organization has designated it a carcinogenic occupation. So there's a lot going on in this space at the moment, a lot of international research in this. So in terms of contamination, it's a requirement now to offer particulate protection, so a layer in the PPE to stop contaminants getting through to the skin. Flash floods is a really good example. It's the only area of the body that's not covered at the moment. So we took the bold step to buy particulate protection flash floods for our firefighters. One of very few services in the country that have took that step at this point in time. So that's how serious we view it. There's a whole raft of work that goes on behind the scene. It's not just when you're in a fire, it's when you come out of a fire. How do you decontaminate? What cleaning equipment have we got? How do we, at what point do we take showers? Clean equipment that we've been using, so on and so forth. So there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in this space. And no doubt it will figure as a risk moving forward when we've got a clear idea around what that is, but it is very much based on a lot of international research, and there's a lot of pressure being brought to bear on the sector internationally to start to resolve this issue.
Thank you. And on the flooding, it could be said, Glenn, Lincolnshire's ahead of the curve, putting this money into these things before we have to, which is probably a good news. Right, so Jackie.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report. Again, very interesting. I have two brief questions on page 52, if I may, please. I noticed that you brought in a lighter jacket for certain types of fire. So I assume, of course, that they will give the same protection. But what I wanted to know, please, does that mean now that firefighters will be issued with two separate jackets for the different instances? That's my first question. And the second one is that you say that you've refreshed your flood response provisions. Could you just give me a tiny bit of information on that, please? Thank you.
Absolutely. So, yes, in short answer to your first question, yes, they will have two jackets. So, what you probably can traditionally envisage on what our firefighters wear within their fire kit, that jacket is being predominantly designed to give them the sufficient protection for going into structural fires. So in essence, it gives them the protection of when they're going into a building that's on fire. It ensures that they're not going to get burnt. It gives them the thermal protection across the board. However, I'm going to be a bit loose with my percentages here, but probably about 90% of their activity doesn't include them going into a burning building. Most of their activities are going to be going to incidents such as we've talked about, such as flooding, such as road traffic collisions, such as specialist rescues, training on the incident ground. And actually, as good as the traditional jackets are for thermal protection, they're very heavy. They can be very warm. So if you can imagine wearing that jacket on a day like today, and you are attending a road traffic collision or you're attending a field fire, the heat stress within the body is quite significant. So what we've done is we've committed to giving them two types of jacket. So the lightweight jacket still absolutely complies with all the legislation to ensure that it keeps them safe within all of the scenarios that they will be exposed to, except for going inside a building on fire. When they're going inside a building on fire, they will wear what you would traditionally see them wearing as a fire kit. So in regards to the commitment to the flood rescue kit, that was, I think we've been touched on before, is on the back of the commitment the County Council has given for the personal protection equipment of the dry suits that have been issued out across the county now. So each firefighter has, and the important element of this is that it is personal issue, because what we learned from the floodings from Babette and Henk, we had a pool of these suits, but because they've been using so frequently, people were wearing other people's dry suits. So actually it wasn't ideal for their welfare and their health and safety. But by having their own personal issue, that means that they can utilise them all the time, and it means that we've got a far more robust personal protective equipment for flooding incidents.
Thank you. I don't know if we could do this before we go to Waddington Training Centre or at Waddington Training Centre, but would members find it useful if we could bring some PPE and some of the jackets, so members can see the relative merits of what we provide? Thank you.
Yeah, that would be helpful. We perhaps have them outside here in the foyer.
Yeah, absolutely. More than happy to do that, yeah.
Thank you. Right, I'm going to ask you a question about people, because I always do. And this is on the percentages of female firefighters that's gone up from 8.21 to 8.57. Now, that's a tiny percentage increase. Is that a whole person? I mean, it can't be much more if it's even one person. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Our numbers are relatively low. So it doesn't take a lot of changing of the female establishment to change those figures. I will probably have to get back to you on exactly what that means in regards to actual people within the organisation. So apologies, I haven't got that figure with me. But we know that's our focus, continued focus in regards to trying to increase our diversity within the organisation. I think we are looking at positive action recruitment and really trying to understand why, and we'll use females in the county don't always see fire and rescue as an employer of choice. And I think there's an awful lot of historic stereotype views of the fire and rescue service that we need to change. And we need to go out there in the communities and showcase why fire and rescue is such a great career for everybody. We also know we have challenges where the bulk of our establishment come from is our on-call stations, and we have a relatively low pool of people that we're able to attract because of the current requirements that we recruit within a short time frame of coming into the station. So we have relatively lower catchment areas where we can recruit from. So those figures do change quite regularly. They're quite fluid. So we have intakes of our on-call personnel 4 times a year. And we look on average of recruiting 12 people on every course. So we're looking at around about 60 people a year that we have the potential to recruit. Our biggest challenge is retaining our people. So as much as we are sometimes looking at nearly 20% of females coming onto the recruits course, our biggest challenge is retaining people within the organisation. To put it into context, about 15 years ago, the average career expectation of an on-call firefighter was just over 14 years. We are now looking at about 3 years and 9 months. So we are having a more significant turnover of our on-call personnel. And we know that's to do with societal changes, societal pressures. People are more transient within our communities than there probably have been. But it does mean that there is a real challenge for us to try to increase that diversity within Lincolnshire.
We were talking about this last night, actually, and with more people working from home now, within a short distance of the on-call stations, there will be people working from home, including Lincolnshire County Council staff, who would be able to be on-call firefighters. So that's what we were thinking would perhaps be a pool of people, not just county council staff, but other people working from home. And we also suggested that perhaps one of the current on-call female firefighters could do a promotional video telling people about how they find it, because that's much more powerful than anything written down.
Absolutely, fully agree on that. And we've done recent videos in regards to showcasing some of our amazing women within the organisation, because I absolutely agree in that seeing is believing. When people say, well, I can sit here as a male firefighter waxing lyrical about what a fantastic organisation is, but actually the most powerful thing is seeing some of our amazing women showcase what they do within Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue. But yeah, within our positive action strategy, we do recognise since the pandemic, work-life balances have changed significantly and there are more people working from home. So that is an area that we need to tap into to see if there's a pool of people there that we can absolutely attract into Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue.
Jackie's going to speak in a minute, but if I can just go on to one other item, and that's the Speak Up reporting line for problems that people may be having, and just really what take-up you've had of that, please.
Yeah, absolutely, Councillor. And again, just for context for everyone, so Speak Up is an independent reporting line that we've committed to give that confidence and assurance for anybody within the organisation that if they feel for whatever reason they can't raise issues either internally or through the existing reporting lines that is already provided through Lincolnshire County Council, that there is an independent avenue where they can report issues in. This is a national trend from all fire and rescue services, and it also links into one of the recommendations from the State of Fire report from His Majesty's Inspectorates, that all services should have an independent reporting line. While that's been up and running, we have that monitored regularly, and at this moment in time we haven't had anybody that's felt the need to utilise that, so we haven't had any reports through to that reporting line as of today.
Thank you. Just to pick on something that you said, you know, about retention and the female side of it. I used to be a teacher and regularly used to take in to talk to the children, armed services, armed forces, emergency services. And on one occasion we had the army in. And they were there were male, female soldiers, and one little lady, aged 14, popped her hand up and said, "What would a woman do in the army?" And it absolutely shocked me. My immediate response was, we failed. You know, that was absolutely shocking. And interestingly, coincidentally, I'm sure, I've seen a similar post recently popping up in my news feed, on my Facebook feed, and oh no, I can't, you know, it's not for women. And the perception, therefore, is there very early, and it still seems to be there. So I wonder whether getting into schools might help early. I'm sure you do. Is that something that's part of your work?
So yes, we do routinely go into schools, particularly into Year 2 and Year 6. If not, it's predominantly in regards to promoting fire safety messages, but also it is absolutely the opportunity to role model the fire and rescue service and take the opportunity to try and break that public perception, because you're absolutely right. What we're recognising is this is an area and a challenge from right from when children are very, very little, and they get pigeonholed into boxes very, very early on, and that's through all the influences that society throws at them. And so by the time they're coming into late teens, they've probably got a view of what's a male role and a female role, which is a challenge for us. We really need to keep promoting that message that the fire and rescue service is for everybody, and absolutely anybody who meet the required standards in entering into the service can actively have a role within Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue, and I think that's a message that should be shared as widely as we possibly can.
I think I've opened a right can of worms here, which is a good thing. Lindsay.
Thank you, Chairman. You did say that, you know, to keep questions short, but you get that kind of worms. It's open. Fully concur with all the questions and comments previously made. A few years ago, I went to a drill night at Curtin Fire Station, and there were some firefighters, and they got all the kit up, and they were kit on, and they were running up and down ladders and hoses and being very efficient, showing us what they can do for us. And there were some little girls by the perimeter fence riding up and down on their bikes, and they were obviously fascinated by what was happening. And I said, would you like to be a firefighter when you grow up? And they said no, because that's what boys do. And there was one of the mums was there, and I said, this is a career for girls as well. And she said, no, it's just for boys. So we have a job of work to do still in 2024 or 2023 as it was then. But we do do work. We've got the cadets program. We'd like to do more, resources allowing. So we are aware of it. We are making progress. This is a generational thing, but it doesn't mean that we don't continue to work hard. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Chair. I'll try not to delve into that can too deep, but I just wanted to ask, do you offer flexible working arrangements for people with young children? Because I'm just thinking, when you think of the obstacles to, and it's not just women who are parents, I'm not saying that, but women are pregnant for 9 and all the rest of it, you know what I mean? And I can imagine having to be at Lincoln North or somewhere for X number of days without being able to go home might be seen as a bit of an obstacle. And I just wondered, I don't know if it's possible to be flexible in your working arrangements. So I just wondered.
Yeah, no, it's a really good question and something we're very alive to. To be honest, that's part of the work that we did last year about reviewing our response model. And one of the drivers of that is that we recognise that actually our historic duty patterns were potentially creating a barrier for people coming into the service. Historically, we knew that people have come to what we call have-a-go days and wanting to actually know about the service. And probably in the past, we've missed some really talented people that have looked at our duty patterns and said, you know, I don't think that would work for me. So that was one of the drivers of reviewing our duty system. And it's one of the drivers why we've now got a one station at Sleaford that doesn't require people to be staying there at night, so they have the flexibility to go home every day. We also have Lincoln South, which also has that flexibility for people to not stay away from their homes and families for extended periods. But we still know that we've got 8 other stations, 7 other stations rather, that are more restricted, and that is our continued commitment within the life cycle of this community risk management plan to look at more family-friendly operational models. But absolutely, you're right, it does need to ensure that we've also providing that 24/7 resilient operational response to the communities of Lincolnshire, because we can't compromise on that, but there are ways that we can probably make it far more flexible.
Thank you. I'm conscious of time, Mark, but these people are interested in your service, and we may get our money's worth while you're here. On page 47, I just wanted to ask you about the road safety champions. I'm conscious we've got Jack here from the Road Safety Partnership. What actually do they do, the nominated people in each station, as regards road safety? Because it's such a big problem. Well, it's a big issue for us here with deaths and serious injuries. Thank you.
So the predominant role of the station road safety advocate is to arrange and organise key messages within their area to promote road safety within their local area. That's either through social media of their local accounts, either that's putting on displays from their station, putting up boards in regards to trying to raise the public awareness of safety on the roads, driving safely, driving to the identified speeds, but also being sometimes a bit more hard-hitting and really raising the awareness of the consequences of poor driving and behaviours and what that can lead to. So it's really about driving through at a local level on local stations to take ownership of that road safety messages across the whole of the county.
And, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. On page 41, you give us some information about equipment, etc. I was wondering whether in future we can have a map of the county identifying where the fire stations are. Your aerial equipment, again, if we could know where they're located. And what are co-responder vehicles? You've got 26. Could you possibly give us an example of what they are?
Yeah, absolutely, Kaz. First and foremost, I think that would probably be really useful. We've got a map that can show where all of our assets are and what they're used for, and I'm more than happy to share that with the committee. In regards to the 26 co-responding vehicles, they are, I think they're small. I think there might be Ford Focuses. I can't remember the exact. Are they Ford Focuses? Yeah, I'm getting a nod. Ford Focuses that are livered up with all the Lives branding and the Lincolnshire County Council branding, and they are on our 26 stations that deliver our co-responding capability, which we're able to do that through dedicated grant funding from the Integrated Care Board, and that goes out to our medical responses in partnership with Lives and EMAS. So those vehicles are dedicated on just the 26 stations that provide that capability.
Right, thank you. We notice, or have been told on various things on the news, that the police use drones. Is that something that you're going to consider, or have you got something but it's not listed as a piece of active equipment?
Yeah, so we're currently scoping out the viability of having a dedicated drone capability for fire and rescue. We have got access to drone capability through the local resilience forum. We also have a partnership arrangement with Lincolnshire Police, where they can give us drone capabilities if we require it. And we've also got agreements with neighbouring services such as Humberside, who have often come into Lincolnshire and also provide that capability. So we are looking at making sure that it is what is the level of capability we require and how probably going to be the most best value for money on it to provide that, either through a collaboration agreement or through having our own dedicated capability. But again, linking into a point and your point earlier is that the advancement in that technology is growing and growing. So we do need to just ensure that we are going to have best value for money as and when we look at what that capability is required.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. And I'll just ask you one last question, Mark. I had more, but I'm going to cut it short. And this is an important one, really, and that's to do with Grenfell and the inquiry and the recommendations from that. Can you just summarise for us, really, where we are in Lincolnshire to make sure we don't have a Grenfell? Thank you.
Yeah, so absolutely. So, the traffic events of Grenfell was quite a number of years ago now. So we've been working through those recommendations for a number of years. In regards to where we are against all of the recommendations, we're pretty much signed off on them now. There's one outstanding one which is relying on some partnership arrangements with EMAS in regards to the ability to sharing information, but if I'm honest, it's not a significant recommendation that we feel is going to compromise our ability to deal with such an event. From the recent HMI inspection, they came and did a tabletop exercise, particularly focused on how we would deal with a live incident in a high-rise building, and they put together a simulated exercise at one of the high-rises within Lincoln. And what we was able to demonstrate, and this is one of the key areas within Grenfell, that we was able to get a very live situational awareness of where people were, what flats people were being evacuated from, where people were still located within those buildings, and was able to share that information through within our control room, through our officers, and also through our incident commanders, and also share that with our blue light partners. And HMIs recognised that we was good in that area, and we've done some significant investment within our protection teams to ensure that we've got all the right skills and knowledge and the data in regards to more of our high risk premises. But in overview, our governance within Fire and Rescue, we monitor this on a monthly basis. We forward our against a national action tracker to the National Fire Chiefs Council. And we had a report in the last quarter which shows that actually we're in a very good position in regards to responding to all the recommendations. But we are more than happy to share that progress and a bit more detail on a future report if the committee would find that useful.
Yeah, I think that will be useful, Emily, to add that. I know we're adding things to the things we need to do, but it's probably one of the most important things. Thank you. We'll bring this to an end now, I think, and I propose that the committee endorses the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue Authority's Statement of Assurance for 2023-24 for publication on the Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue's website. So, does everybody agree? Can you show, please? Thank you. Right, well, we haven't finished with you yet, Mark, because the next item is the Integrated Risk Management Plan 2020 to 24, the closure report on pages 59 to 66 of the agenda pack, setting out the achievements of that plan, the actions required by the committee to review and comment on the information contained in the plan, and it's going to be again presented by Mark and Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll try and keep this one brief because there's a lot of synergies between some of the information in this report and also in the Statement of Assurance. But the more significant difference is the timeline of what the Integrated Risk Management Report update is. So again, just to put some of the context, this was our strategic document which outlines over a 4-year period on what we've assessed as what our community risks are, which we identified 11 of them over the period between 2020 and 2024. And this report just gives some narrative on how we felt we have mitigated against those risks. I think the one thing that is just probably important to put it into context because time has flown by and I think it's sometimes we forget. When this Integrated Risk Management Plan was developed, COVID was around. And actually the operating model of the whole of the county was very, very different. And so the lifespan of this management plan has absolutely spanned through our COVID years and also post-COVID years. So one of the things that we committed to was at the midpoint just at the beginning of 2023 was to review the 4-year plan. To ensure that it was still relevant and it was still fit for purpose. And what we did recognise that within our community risk, we updated some of the terminology and some of the focus that was related specifically for pandemic and then how we would respond to that because obviously we had an awful lot of learning from that response. Again, I'm not going to go into some of the details because I'll probably the opportunity for questions to be asked. But the report is set out against the 11 risks to really give some headlines on over a 4-year period on where we've seen the direction of travel in some of our key areas. And across the board, we've made steady improvements in regards to some of our performance indicators, which I don't think will be surprised because, again, a lot of the data and the detail that we report on a quarterly basis through this Scrutiny Committee, through our performance indicators. But this is just really an overview of the direction of travel over a 4-year period.
Thank you, Mark. Right, any questions from anyone? Nikki.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mark. Yeah, I could have asked you this question at any time, really, within your report, so I'm going to ask it now. You did point out in previous reports about making adjustments to your mandates with taking into account Martin's Law, which I know now, and also Grenfell, which you'd done that anyway, but Martin's Law is fairly recent due to the Manchester bombings and things like that. So can you just give us a brief outline of what you've been doing in order to accommodate that for your strategies? Thank you.
Yeah, so absolutely. So if I give a a bit of an overview in regards to the Martin's Law. At the moment, the legislation hasn't been fully signed off yet. It's still waiting for that to go through. However, we've done a lot of preparedness work. So where the Martin's Law is really going to be focused on is ensuring that anybody that's going to go to a public event, and there are bandings in regards to how large those public events are. There will be different levels of responsibility on the people who are running those events to ensure that there is sufficient training for people who are supporting those events, to ensure that there is sufficient security checks, and to ensure that there are sufficient and robust risk assessments to ensure that it reduces the risk of the potential for any events such as the Manchester Arena happening again. If not, the bulk of our work that we are linked into is through the Local Resilience Forum in regards to this, because it will be a multi-agency responsibility, and there will also be areas within Lincolnshire County Council on on the events that obviously, as Councillor Corey has mentioned, such as the fantastic events we have on the castle. At the moment, Lincolnshire isn't a high-risk area. We don't have the events to the size and the capability that a lot of this legislation has been primarily focused on. And also, I think it's really important as a public assurance message is that actually, yes, we will be looking at the impact of Martin's Law, but we are still a low-risk area with a low-risk county. However, that does not mean that we won't take the impacts very seriously, and we will be working within a multi-agency environment to ensure that everybody goes to any event in the safe knowledge that they can just enjoy the event for what the event's for. So, but we will wait until that legislation has been fully signed off.
I'll come to you in a minute, Mike. If I could just ask first, on the IT situation on page 64, you mentioned about Microsoft, and this is something that we were talking about last night. Some of the in-house IT applications seem to be can be a bit troublesome, and obviously you say you're going to concentrate on those, so perhaps you could just update the committee on that, because it obviously is a really vital tool in supporting the firefighters particularly. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm going to bring Steve into this because he's more of the expert, and also it probably gives you a change of voice as well. So,
expert is a big ask, but certainly we have a lot of in-house systems, as you well know, very bespoke to Fire and Rescue Service. There is a drive to where we can get some synergy with LCC, so share systems. Microsoft 365 is a good example, for instance. But where we have bespoke systems, we are reviewing them. We've got a plan to replace all those systems almost like a capital plan or a revenue plan, depending on the type of system it is, moving forward. So ahead of time, review those systems, decide what does need replacing, or actually moving across to the LCC platform if at all possible. But aside from that, some of those systems will absolutely be bespoke. We were talking about mobile data terminals last night, and very definitely we realise they are a risk, so much so that they're in the programme, the control programme, to replace next year. And in fact, we're out for tender as things stand at the moment. So we do realise that there are some risk-critical bespoke programmes that we need to focus on, and are doing so. So much so that when you look at the risk register, in light of the HMIC, His Majesty's Inspectorate, who came down and recognised actually IT support or IT systems was one of the areas that we did need to focus on. They are now reflected in the risk register, and they are reflected in our programme of work. So yeah, it's very much an area of focus for us.
It was something simple last night, wasn't it? By trying to put a password into a handheld device with little buttons in a fast-moving vehicle. It was just something as simple as that would make life better for people. Okay, Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. It's more an observation. I was quite impressed with the risk elements that you've listed, and you seem to have really thought through the equipment, the clothing and the training required. So, excellent report. Thank you.
Any more comments? We have given you a good grilling on all the other sections, so if that's it, I would propose the committee is satisfied with the Integrated Risk Management Plan 2020 to 24 closure report and congratulates Lincolnshire Fire and Rescue on its achievements over the period of the plan. PS, we will continue to hold you to account. Thank you very much, Mark, and thank you, Steve, for giving up your time this morning. Thank you. Is everybody in favour with that? I didn't ask you to show. Yeah, yes, yeah, okay. Right, thank you very much. We're moving on now to the item 9, the performance of the library service contract year 8. On pages 67 to 78 of the agenda pack, providing an update of the contract performance information to enable us to fulfil its role in scrutinising performance on the 8th year of the outsourced library contract to Greenwich Leisure Limited, also known as GLL. Our actions required are to review and comment on the information included in the report, to consider and support the ongoing development and proposed Year 9 developments, and to highlight any additional priorities for consideration. And we've got a plethora of people here to answer our questions: Louise, Will, Rebecca and Nicola. So I'll hand over to, is it Louise? Yeah, Louise, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just to give a few highlights from last year's performance, we were thrilled that we'd received over 1 million visits across our 15 core sites, and over 2 million issues, so physical issues of stock, which is a 21% increase on the target and a 17% increase on the previous year. So we have obviously historically through COVID, and as a result of the recovery through COVID, started to see people attending less often but borrowing the same amount or more books. So the demand and the requirement of both the physical and the digital side of things is still ever present. Alongside that, last year we had nearly 7,000 staff-led activities events. So that was ranging from things like the Lego clubs that are always successful, to the Summer Reading Challenge, which was 16% up on the previous year, and has actually started again for this year. So we've got a plethora of activities and summer reading related activities across all of our core sites that are currently active. If anyone would like to go and visit those, you're more than welcome. And obviously quite a few other engagement sessions, IT courses that we do provide for our users and our customers. There are quite a few examples within the report itself, so I won't go through that in this morning's session. However, I did want to highlight one in particular, which was the successful clothes swap that we have at Lincoln Central. And as a result of kind of the clothing swap and that initiative and that scheme, it did actually develop last March around the World Book Day event. And obviously, it's something that a lot of children, a lot of schools are actively encouraging for children to get into reading and into literacy. But that can be a cost pressure for obviously parents. So what the World Book Day clothing swap did was provide an opportunity for parents to be able to go in and get one of those items, a dress up for their child, without obviously the expensive price tag that a lot of the shops place on those items. We also continue to support, obviously, the community hub model, which we see as very successful across Lincolnshire. That continues to be a success across the library service and the network that we can provide to our very rural county, and indeed is something that we continue to get a lot of questions and engagement from other local authority libraries in terms of how that community managed side is available and the model across Lincolnshire. Moving forward to this year, to 24-25, we obviously continue with all of the kind of bread and butter services for Lincolnshire libraries, but also in particular it's about continuing that community support. So in Gainsborough, we've currently got a Living with Cancer drop-in session that's proving very successful with Macmillan, about being able to offer support to our customers and our residents for those that are either physically have got the disease, or those that are living with individuals and supporting those that are unfortunately going through that diagnosis. Moving forward to this year as well, from a wider perspective, GLL are developing their Literacy Foundation, which is about supporting local authors develop in terms of that being a business for themselves, but also about making those local connections to publishers, and kind of that grass level authors coming up through the system that don't necessarily benefit from living in London, and kind of publishers being around the corner. So it's about trying to provide support to them as a business, but also making connections to schools and to publishers alike. Obviously, for ourselves, the major focus for this year is the reprocurement of the library service. So the library service contract with GLL does expire on the 31st of March 2026. So there's a lot of work that we're putting in now in terms of getting that reprocurement ready, looking at what the service and the model is. We've already started going out and priming providers and potential bidders and looking at the market. So we're just currently working through that, and that's a heavy focus for this year internally. Unfortunately, we're not actually out to market yet. The tender isn't live, so I will be limited in terms of the level of depth and detail I can go into today, particularly with having a current provider in the room and sat next to me. But hopefully the next time we come to the Scrutiny Committee, we'll be able to provide a little bit more detail around the future of what that model and what the service will be like for 2026. And I would just like to hand over to Nicola to see if there's anything additional to highlight from last year that you want to raise.
Nothing particularly significant to highlight, other than as we're sat here with colleagues from Fire, just to make you aware, we have actually in the last few months been having discussions with the Community Fire Safety Manager about how we can work with them and with the fire service to help. Obviously, as libraries are spaces of trusted information, we can help, as we do with, for example, Macmillan's and the Living with Cancer sessions, we can help get word out about particularly fire safety messages. So that's something we're looking at hopefully introducing in the next year in our core libraries, but particularly through our network of the rural and the access mobile libraries, where we as a library service reach some of the most isolated and vulnerable people in the county, and our staff are trusted, particularly with our access users. And so it's for them to be able to advocate essentially for fire colleagues to say, did you know about this service, and pass that message on and encourage uptake. So that's something we're particularly looking forward to. We're also currently working with the Connect to Support Adult Social Care team, again through our rural and mobile service, about getting the word out about their services. So again, more people can access the support and help that they need. And as Louise said, alongside our bread and butter of keeping the county reading, keeping the county connected is very much at the heart of what we want to do.
Thank you. Is that you, Jackie? Oh, Karen and then Jackie.
Is it time for...
Can we just have Lindsay first? Do you mind if you want to just add to that, and then we'll bring Karen in?
Yeah, yes, I do. Just thank you for your indulgence, Chairman. Thank you. And I'm glad that Nicola mentioned the fire service, because superficially you think, well, there's they're very quite different services, but actually they're quite similar. You have the core service, and then you have community-led resources. And that's what we're about in Lincolnshire. We are responsive to and responsible to community need. And this is another service, another proud service of Lincolnshire County Council that puts care, innovation and excellence at the centre of its policy making and of its service delivery. But please do take a look at this. It's a fantastic document. It's got the map that we asked for. It shows where all the community hubs are and where all our community libraries are. And it's not just about, from looking at this, it's not just about keeping the county reading. It's about keeping the county knitting as well, which is a great service. So, but the job's not done, and we continue to look for ways to get better, and we continue to look to ways to innovate. And this is not just from the top, this is from the bottom as well. And we listen to what our communities want, and we try to deliver them. So thank you very much for your presentation, Nicola and Louise. And I'm really interested to hear what members have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Karen.
Thank you. Again, I want to just absolutely commend this report. It's a brilliant report. I use my hub all the time. My library book's actually on my car seat at the moment because I've got to get back today or tomorrow, otherwise I'll get a fine, and I've not had one yet. I'd like to use the opportunity to call out, to give a big shout out to Bishop Gostesk, who run my local library hub, to Alison and to Lauren as well. They're just brilliant, and all the volunteers. I'm on the steering group, so I do try and keep involved with it, but I just can't commend it enough. I mean, for me, it would be much, much better if we had extra opening hours. I'm aware we've got extra at the moment because BG have gone out and looked for funding everywhere they possibly can. And I shout about funding priorities because Lincolnshire County Council sets its funding priorities. And for me, a library service would be up there when we're setting them, next February extra money in so that actually they don't have to go around looking with a begging bowl for funding, that actually that funding, the LCC give them extra funding, plus when we've got underspends as well, such as we have coming to council in September, for me, putting extra money into opening library hubs more and more. People over potholes with me every time. Our library hub is very much a community hub. I have my surgeries there, and it's just, they have toddler group at the same time. It's just magic, listening to the kids singing, and they have the citizens' advice there as well on that Wednesday morning session. And they've even had meditation and all sorts there, and I think they're going to have a gardening club, is my understanding. So it's not, there's a lot of merit in books, but it's not just books. You know, there's everything there, and if it was up to me, you'd get a lot more money and you'd be opening 6 days a week. But I'll just keep hammering away on it. But thank you very much. Thank you for everything.
Thank you, Karen. In my area, you could hit a pothole getting to the library. So that's the dilemma we have, obviously, with this.
And you could walk, Andrew.
You could, but not everybody can in where I live. Anyway, we won't get into that. We'll move on. It's William next, and then Nick.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your excellent report. And this is a very good document. I love all the infographics, that they're really, really good. I just want to comment on the staff-led activities, those additional activities. Clearly, it's an excellent core offer that's been offered through our libraries. But there's those additional activities that have made them very successful community hubs. And Councillor Lindsay must be congratulated for that, because I know she's really been on about that for the last 2 or 3 years. And they have become, Councillor Corey, very successful community hubs. As you all know, I'm the County Council for Horncastle. We have a library in Horncastle, which is very, very successful. But I just wrote down here, just in the last few weeks, the things I've been invited to, extra things at the library. There was a schools literary festival. I was asked to be one of the judges. There was a consultation for the new heritage boards for the heritage trail through the town. Links Digital have regular drop-ins. Barclays Bank are there every week. Those are just a few things I've seen over the last few weeks, and I'm sure there's many others of them. But it just confirms what I'm saying, how valuable resource our community libraries and community hubs have been, and for all age groups. When I was there at the Literary Festival, lots of parents and carers were there with young people who had entered the school's Literary Festival. You could hear several times being said, oh, we never come to the library, because they hadn't been, but because that Literary Festival was on, they were there at the library. Just a shout out to your very talented manager there, Sadie Hurst, who's the manager of the Horncastle Library. She was in there with her team. She was there with me. She heard some of those comments. She was there talking to those parents and carers about the extra services and how can they help. You know, what could they offer their children? So congratulations on the great work you're doing.
Thank you. Before Nick comes in, if somebody isn't a member of the library, can you just tell us, what do they have to do to become a member of their local library? Thank you.
It's incredibly simple. If you're online, you can go online and you can join online then and there. For online joining, you don't need to provide any identification. We just need you to fill in the basic name, address, contact details, etc. And once you've verified that online through obviously the security measures, you will be sent your library membership number, and you can start using our digital facilities straight away from that. If you're wanting to actually physically use the library and have a library card, that's something you can join online, then come in and talk to a member of staff in our core library, and we can turn your, what we call your temporary, your H number, your online number, into a full library membership and issue with a library card. Or if you don't want to do online, you can just come in and talk to one of our staff and they will join you then and there. And again, your library cards, you'll get that and a PIN number. That's something you can then use to download our app and be able to manage your library account through that or through our website. It also means you can access our online resources, so not just our digital e-magazines, e-audiobooks, etc. We have things like Encyclopedia Britannica. You can access that remotely from home with your library card and PIN number. A whole range of things, as well as coming along, obviously, to the libraries and borrowing our physical books, taking part in other activities, using our computers, using our Wi-Fi.
Thank you. That was a good commercial break.
Hey, thank you.
Better start at the beginning. Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nicola and team. It's just an observation, really, and you're probably doing this already. But you did mention about living with cancer and information about that. And my other thing was I was just going to ask about. I did read your report, but couldn't see anything detail about that. So, having attended corporate parenting last week, shortage of foster parents, information about that would be great. You know, if you could get some information out there, just information for people to pick up, and they might just consider it. Living with dementia and also women's services. I don't know whether you do that. I have seen lots of information in the main library, but I'm not sure about the wider library area. So that would be great if you could get some of that information out. And thank you for everything that you do. It's amazing. Thank you.
Just to mention, I mean, in terms of fostering, getting more information out, that's something we're always open to. We may not have something physically at site, but again, if we're asked, my staff are very good at signposting and finding that information. We may not have a particular book or leaflet, but we'll know where to look for that information to help someone. In terms of some of the other areas, we have done work with LDAS around domestic abuse support. All of my managers and our library development officers have done their training course and again cascaded that again to staff so that the teams are aware, though, and they may be dealing with somebody that needs additional support. Again, we have the links that we can forward on to from there. So I hope that answers. I mean, the living with cancer, that is in response to a specific parts of the county are wanted. Likewise, we're also working with the NHS Partnership Trust on their new virtual autism hub, which is virtual, but they also want to do some in-person sessions, so we're currently arranging them. So it's very much something we're open to. All of my core libraries are open to organisations from the council, the NHS community, that they want to reach new and different audiences. We have what we call our little pop-up stands. You can come along, talk to members of the public and reach parts of the county you might not reach otherwise.
And just to add to that as well, we are working with other colleagues who are working with Zoe in terms of the women and girls strategy, in terms of where we can be supportive in particular around that kind of coercion and trying to get women and young girls in particular away from kind of crime and more into kind of prevention and making sure that we are that safe, welcome space that people can come into. And I think the kind of two streams that I talk about the most when I'm talking to other areas within the council is, yes, that we are kind of trusted information, but also that because we are that welcome space, we don't have the stigma. So when you're walking in, it's not that you're going in to try and be prevented from crime. It's not because you're going in because you've got substance misuse, which I know is on your agenda later. We've got that welcome door and no one knows what you're going in for. And that's why we do try to have those surgeries and to have the drop-ins with a mixture of different organisations, which we try and link to the needs of those communities. So at Lincoln Central, it is a lot more broad for what we can offer, because we do acknowledge that the demographics that are using that site or that potentially will come into that site is a lot greater than what some of our community hubs are. So we do really try and tailor what's available and the information, but we're always open to more information being available and being able to help and doing that signposting. And just one final one on the domestic abuse. I know that we are in conversations as well, because it's been highlighted. A lot of individuals that are requiring that information around domestic abuse and that agenda are using our public network, so our free computers in sites, to be able to get that information. So we do know that there are other linkages and synergies there that we're working with the team over.
Thank you for that. Thank you, Chair. Just slight indulgence again. The public are looking for places of safety and trust, and it just goes to show over the years how libraries have changed in offering that warm, safe space and additional information. So I just want to thank you once again for that, and I'm really pleased that you're doing it, because I don't like to miss opportunities for other services that can pop in. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, thank you very much for this report and for all the work you're doing. Had a very nice moment in my local library the other day. I walked in and right there on the shelf were two best-selling novels I'd copy edited about 10 years ago. I used to copy edit professionally and still do sometimes, occasionally, but it was really nice to see that some very good books were still going out there. I'll tell you about that later. I've just done an article, my monthly article in Saxby, and I've praised the library service enormously, and I've used some of your figures from today's to show from today's papers to show the achievements that you've managed over the year, and I think you're very much to be praised. I do have one question though. So the libraries are dependent largely on volunteers, and in Saxby we have very, very good volunteers, and the library's laid out beautifully. But children can never go during term time, ever. There is only one day when it's open until 4 o'clock. Well, the children finish school at about 3:30. They can't get there. By the time they get there, it's closed. There is no other day, not at the weekends at all. So our children in a village of about 5,000 people can't use the library. Is there anything we can do to try to, is there any way we can try to attract more people in? We talk about it, we encourage, and the people who are there do a wonderful job. They really are very efficient at their service. But the children can't go to the library, and that's really worrying because we need to lay down the future use as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, in particular with the community hubs, they are volunteer managed, as you say. So we are dependent upon what the volunteers are available for and the hours that they can schedule. What we try to do is ensure that the hours are consistent, because what we don't want to do is to be changing the hours that were being advertised and then someone obviously attending and the facility not be available and open and create disappointment. What we do have through GLL is a fantastic team of library development officers who go out and support each of the community hubs. And I know that there is a lot of work that they will do with the hubs themselves around volunteers in particular and trying to do volunteer drives. And indeed, it is kind of another section within LCC around volunteering that we've discussed previously to see if there's more cross-promotion of maybe opportunities to reach a wider audience to see if they can come in. So it's definitely something that I'll take back for Saxby in particular to look at. But it is something that the LDOs do continuously support the community hubs with of trying to drive that volunteer base that they've got available.
Karen, were you going to add to that? Because Mike was in front of you, but you go first.
Yeah, it was specifically on that because at the Ermine, they've got some money from somewhere, and I'm not exactly sure where, but I can find out, Jackie. And they rejigged their opening hours. The weekday ones are slightly on different days, but longer, but we actually get 2 hours on a Saturday morning now, because I take your point totally. And that's my point about increasing the money that LCC give them, because we should pat ourselves on the back. We are doing a good job, but actually could do better because they could open more hours if they had the funding to do that and if they didn't have to rely totally, so much on volunteers. But we open on a Saturday morning for 2 hours, so it can be done. It's about having the money to do it.
Thank you. Mike?
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed on page 68, it was very pleasing to read the complete variety of activities that you get in the various libraries, and there's good response that you're receiving from parents and children. I was wondering whether we could possibly blow our own trumpet a bit and get some good news stories out there and possibly get Look North to do a happy story for once rather than all the death and destruction that they seem to put out. Thank you.
Thank you. We have actually got a press release through our corporate comms team, in particular around last year and the 1 million visits and the 2 million issues that we've received. And Nicola last night actually did do a piece to radio, particularly on this and the successful year that we've had thus far with the libraries and obviously what that's going into to this year. So hopefully we have got a little bit of that covered. But yeah, Chris and I can talk on that, see if there's anything additional that we can do.
Lovely, thank you. Just one last question from me, and that's to do with the contract components, and it was the targeted provision on page 75, home library services to eligible users. I just wondered if you could tell us what that is, please.
Home library service, it's another way. I mentioned earlier our Access Mobile. So essentially our Access Mobile is a home library service. So that is taking books to the door of people who are unable to reach a core or a community hub library. It may be through age, infirmity, disability or illness at that point of time. So yes, it is usually older housebound residents. But we have, over the years, we've served young mothers living with cancer that couldn't get out to get books for their small children. So we're taking to them. So it can be a longer term situation or we will do shorter term. somebody's out of commission because of a hip operation or something, and they can't get to their local library, we will see them for a short period of time to make sure that they don't miss out on the library service. So
And
essentially,
how do they access that? And do they know about it?
that's something, I mean, again, we have information all on our website, but a lot of our users aren't online. We get quite a few that will have been using our core libraries and get to a point where staff will very tactfully say, did you know? So again, we can kind of refer them from our staff. We do quite a lot, again, if they're already using the mobile library, we will refer that way. We have a number of different ways it comes through. We go out to quite a lot of community events to try and promote what we're doing with the NHS, local partnerships and such like. So we're always open to more ways of getting the word out about the Access service. So it can come from any avenue, to be perfectly honest.
Lovely, thank you. Well, I think that's it with questions. So I propose the committee is satisfied with the performance information included in the report and supports the ongoing development and proposed Year 9 developments highlighted in it, and that our comments and views in relation to priorities for Year 9 be shared with the relevant officers and GLL partners for consideration. So could everyone show that they're in support of all of this? Thank you. Well, that is approved. Now, we did have, Simon very kindly did me at the beginning, a rough time scale for everything, and I obviously don't tell you what it is because I don't want to limit people's questions, but I think we are currently 3 minutes overdue. No, 15 minutes overdue, so we'll have a very short break. I'll say 5 minutes, but you'll end up being 10, and we'll stop the feed for 5 or 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and carry Welcome back, everyone. The next item is item 10, the service level performance reporting against success framework. On pages 79 to 111, reflecting on the performance achieved in Q4 that's relevant to community safety, trading standards, fire safety, libraries and heritage, road safety and volunteering. We've got to review and comment on the figures and to agree the 24-25 Public Protection and Community Service Level Performance Indicators and Targets as shown in Appendix A. So instead of inviting everybody to speak, we haven't got time really, I'll take the report as read and invite members of the committee to ask questions on each section in turn. And we've got various officers here to answer them. So we'll start with community safety, pages 80 to 82. Any questions? No. Trading standards, pages 83 to 85. Nick.
Thank you very much. I was looking at all of the detail of the visits, the 54 visits to the 27 premises for the illicit alcohol and tobacco products. I know this is your area, right? So I was just wondering, the hours of monitoring, we often forget, don't we, about the hours of time that goes into that. If you could just give me a brief outline of that and how that was managed. And also, it doesn't sound a lot, does it? 60 litres of alcohol, 6,500 packs of cigarettes. It doesn't sound a lot. But I want to ask you about the closures as well. There were 32 closure orders over a 3-month period, 5 for second closure orders, and then 4 for 3 closure orders. Can I ask you as well, are some of these repeat offending landlords, or are they different? And were there any of these at Lincoln City? Thank you.
Right. In terms of the work on illicit tobacco, we have a team of officers that are dedicated to doing illicit tobacco and product safety, although this year a lot of their work has been around illicit tobacco and vapes because they tend to be sold from the same premises. It doesn't sound like huge numbers in terms of the seizures. We don't actually have powers to seize illicit alcohol unless it's counterfeit. This is work that we do with the licensing team, and they're looking for non-duty paid. So most of that will be non-duty paid stuff that's been removed from the shelves. In terms of the closure orders themselves, yes, 31, 32 is a good start. We continue that into this year. It is disappointing that we're seeing the same premises being used, but they're not always the same business that's trading out of it. But it, generally speaking, is the same landlord. One of the things that we've done off the back of the closure orders is when we write to landlords now, we do emphasise the point that these premises have been closed, and that's been a court decision that these businesses are trading illegally, and highlighting the fact that if people take payments in terms of rental from those people who are operating those illegal businesses, that could be considered a money laundering offence. That has had some resonance with landlords, and whilst it's not reported in this particular report, for the first 6 months of this year, we've had 11 evictions of businesses working with the landlords, and some of those landlords are not allowing shops back in, they're repurposing them into other types of business. So it is starting, the message is starting to get through with landlords as well, and it's something that we'll continue to pursue where we find illicit tobacco on sale. We routinely speak to the landlord.
Thank you, Nick. Before I come to you, Mike, Mark, can I just ask you on page 85, animal health visits, 33% identified major non-compliances, which obviously I was a bit horrified about because I assume this is to do with animal welfare, is it?
Some of it is animal welfare, some of it is in relation to the failure to dispose of fallen stock correctly, so animal byproducts work. We do have a number of premises that we are monitoring and that we're visiting on an ongoing basis where we've experienced problems on farm when we visited. Some of those do come into compliance. Where they don't, then you know, we try to work with the farmer initially. If we can't get the resolution, then ultimately we'll consider taking animals into our possession if needs be. But generally speaking, that work is ongoing and does tend to resolve the problem. Those seizures of animals are relatively few and far between.
Can I just ask you, because I don't really understand this area of your work, so would you visit someone who was, say, a dog breeder or a farmer who had cattle? How would you get involved with animals?
Right, so our remit is generally around livestock, so anything that's going into the food chain. We don't generally deal with pet animals. That's they're licensed, breeders are licensed by the district councils, and you know, if people have concerns about welfare of those sites, then that's generally reported to the RSPCA. Our remit is you know, pretty much entirely around the livestock chain, so it's pigs, sheep, cattle, poultry predominantly. We've had a bit of a focus on poultry this year, and we work closely with the Animal and Plant Health Agency amongst all of those visits and calls.
Sorry to keep asking you about it, but I am concerned about it because I obviously, like a lot of people, I love animals. So you would go to somewhere where they say a chicken farm. What would be a major non-compliance in a chicken farm, for example?
Well, it's not my area of expertise. What we've been looking at this year is it's around an infection of feet in poultry that's caused by poor husbandry. And it's usually down to not changing litter on the floor frequently enough, so they get burns and sores on the feet of the birds due to the level of uric acid that's there. So that would be one of the things that we look for on a poultry farm. But again, it would be how those animals are being kept. Is it overcrowded? Are they being fed, watered appropriately? Are proper veterinary inspections being undertaken, that type of thing?
Thank you. I'd not even considered that was something that you do, so that's very interesting. Thank you. Any more questions? Mike, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I noticed in the report about selling vapes to children. How do you get that information? Are you literally standing outside and as a kiddie comes out, you subject them to the third degree, or how do you manage that information? Thank you.
Some of it is reported through to us by parents, by schools, by local policing teams, where if they've got concerns about particular premises. But we do also have a programme of inspections where we take underage volunteers and visit premises, and they go in and attempt to buy them and to see what the reaction of the shop is. So yeah, we have probably about 60 inspections a year based on those where we take the young people out.
Thanks, Mike. And just before we let you go, Mark, I noticed you've had some jobs advertised recently. If I'd been a few years younger and not sitting here, I would definitely have been applying for them, because I know it's an issue you've said about recruitment to be able to meet these targets. Did you have much of a response to your job applications?
Well, when we advertise for a fully qualified officer, no, not even so much as a phone call inquiring. But that is it's a national problem. It's assured that there is a shortage countrywide, so it wasn't unexpected. But we have lost 2 food officers this year, one to retirement and one to move into another authority. So we wanted to at least try and get somebody with an equivalent qualification back in to replace them. That's not been possible, unfortunately. So we have gone out again at entry level. We had 48 applications for them for 2 posts, and we're interviewing next week and the week after, because there were so many good applications that we're going to do 4 days of interviews and hopefully get a couple of quality people in.
That's excellent news, because I know it's something that I've brought up with you before, but that's a really good response to that application. That's obviously the way you're going to have to go, isn't it?
It is, unfortunately. I've done a little bit of work on it because we're starting to look at sort of medium to longer term, particularly around some of those specialist areas around food, around feed hygiene enforcement. Because the teams that are undergoing them at the moment are, some of the officers are a bit longer in the tooth, like myself, and if we're looking at the next sort of 10 to 15 years, those teams are pretty much going to have to be replaced en bloc. So it's how do we start to make sure that we've got people coming through and the succession planning is there. So we are looking at that. In terms of the 2 officers that left who are food qualified, we have just had 2 people who've passed their food exam. Obviously, that's good news, because it keeps us at the same level of capacity in terms of food officers. Unfortunately, it means we're about 40 years down on experience and knowledge that those people who've left have gained. So, again, it's an area that we are pushing some of our new recruits towards those particular areas when they're doing their training. So, in the next sort of 4 to 5 years, we'll probably have another 4 food officers who've been through the training.
Thank you, Marco. You know I'm a champion of your department, and it's very much under the radar, so anything we can do as a committee to highlight the work you do, it's vital work, in my opinion, that I'm very keen to do. But the response rate to your application sounds very positive. Next,
Chairman, can I just interrupt a minute? I didn't quite catch your eye. I'd be keen to know the qualifications you said people were getting. It's not one of those subjects that seems to readily come onto a training course at a college or university. So how do you get qualified?
From our perspective, it's a statutory qualification to undertake food. And there are a number of qualifications that people can do that are listed in the Food Law Code of Practice. In terms of trading standards, what we train people under is our professional qualification, which is listed there. So it's not something that people can readily do outside of trading standards. You can get some exemptions to some of the papers within that qualification if you've got things like a law degree that covers consumer law. If you've got like a food technical qualification, it might give you some exemption to food papers, that type of thing. But we look at that in partnership with the Chartered Trading Standards Institute. We would look at the qualifications that people have when they come into the service, and they would map that against the qualification and tell us what it is that was exempt and what wasn't exempt. But from our perspective, we generally push people through that training programme.
Thank you. Well, let's move on to fire safety then, pages 85 to 95. Is there anything we haven't asked Mark?
Yes.
Jackie's thought of something.
So it would be me. On page 87, you're talking about impact of poor extreme weather due to storms, etc. Those are not normal situations, and I wonder, when you're actually setting targets and things like that, is there any subtlety within the targets that you can factor the extremes in? I know that they're part of real life, and so they do affect the targets, but with one, I can't remember with this Babette or Henk, one of those storms, when I phoned Lincolnshire Fire, I was rerouted through to Northern Ireland to Herefordshire. Well, you ain't going to come out if you're going to get those calls. So does something like that affect your response times, or is it factored in? Do they take account of it?
if you're happy for me to take that one. I suppose the answer is yes. Over the long term it is, because they have a net effect. So we've seen much more in the way of storms, floodings, etc. So they are affecting the figures, response times, etc. So over time the trend will alter to take account of them. And you can see that nationally that is absolutely happening. In terms of rediverting calls, yeah, I mean, during spate conditions, you know, wide-scale flooding, etc., that does happen. But we have robust arrangements in place to get the right resources over. So on the odd occasion when we're not able to answer a call and you do get diverted through BT to another service, they have arrangements to get in contact with us so we can get the right service. But in answer to your question, yes, they are accounted for in the longer term.
Lovely, thank you, Jackie. And if I could just ask you on the home fire safety visits, you're definitely moving in the right direction, I think, aren't you, with this? But the target is 10,000 and you're at 8,000, which is a hell of a lot of visits, 10,000, but you get in there. What more can you need? What more needs to be done to get to 10,000? Thank you.
Yeah, that target when we set it some time ago was deliberately high to challenge ourselves. I mean, I think 3 years ago we were doing something like 2,500, 3,000. So, you know, we're very proud of the work we've done. In moving this forward, I think the key will be in the data that we've got. So at the moment, crews will go out with a list of data because we'll profile the houses at address level. So crews will go out with a list of addresses where we think, based on the data we've got, vulnerable people live. The reality is not all those houses are the right houses because the data is flawed. It's based on mosaic data, which is national data. The better we get at getting the right data sets in, the right information into the system, the more accurately we can profile where those vulnerable people live in the community. So we'll use our time much more effectively, and that's the next big step. So talking about the analytics, the data processing, etc., that sits behind the actual activity itself. So, you know, crews go out for 2-3 hours in an afternoon, knock at 20 doors, maybe 5 of those, 3, 4, 5 maybe are vulnerable people. But if we can get to the stage where every property we knock on the door is the right person, the figures will improve significantly because we won't be wasting that time, that valuable time.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I didn't want to take away from you the fact you'd done 8,000 visits. It's just, obviously the target's 10, but well done for improving so much. Mike.
Thank you, Chairman. It's regarding your petroleum licensing inspections. You've lost a couple of officers. Have you managed to retrain or recruit somebody to come back into that?
Yeah, very good question. Yes, we have. We lost 3 people, quite short notice, 3 trained qualified officers. It takes some time to re-qualify in that area because it's very specialist, so up to 2 years to qualify. We've re-recruited. We are training those officers. And what isn't in the report is the target is based on a 3 year. So over 3 years, we'll have to do 100%. This is the 3rd year. We are looking at achieving that target ultimately, although we've had a dip of late. Performance in the last quarter has gone up as well. So we're confident we will meet the 3-year target, although we've had obviously the issues around recruitment capacity and skills in the team. But yes, in answer, we have recruited to those posts, although it does take time to train those staff.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we'll move on then to Libraries and Heritage, pages 95 to 100. Well, I think nobody's got anything to ask you, Will. We have just covered a lot of stuff, though, haven't we? So if that's the case, thank you, everybody, for coming to do those sections. And I propose that the committee have... Oh, I missed the bottom. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry, Jack. You sat there all this time. I'd not turned over. No. Road safety, 100 to 102. And you must ask Jack something because he's been here all the time.
Oh, go on. I've got one.
Oh, Jackie's got a question.
Yeah, we've got
for
one. Yeah. This again is to do with targets. Some years ago, when we actually had this committee or a similar committee using road safety, we had this awful target about the number of children killed on the road. And I remember one year they said 2, and I said we really can't do that. We need a target of 0. You know. And I'm glad that you're putting this forward in a much more sensitive way now. But I noticed that there were 7 children killed or seriously injured. Do we know, are there any, apart from the fact that, you know, there could be these unforeseen accidents, was there anything that you can think of that could have been done to prevent those? Is this children just stepping out when they're on their own? What is the age? Any information you can give me, because 7 child deaths is awful. Thank you.
Yep, no, thank you for that. Without seeing the specific collisions for this here, I can't really comment, but there are no patterns that have come to light with the children so far. I mean, last year I can recall one which was a double child fatal, and that was just in a vehicle on the coast. So that was nothing to do with schools, nothing to do with anything. It was just a very unfortunate incident. But we're striving to get into schools and educate them with our road safety officers that are going in with new campaigns. Recently did one at the Lincolnshire show when we was getting children to come in and design cycle helmets, and the best designs won a safety kit bag, which promoted cycle safety specifically. But yeah, no, we keep going forward, trying to think of different ways of engaging with children, but sometimes they are just unforeseen.
Thank you, Chairman. Driving around the county at the moment, we seem to have more roadworks going on, and whether it be water, electric, etc. Do they ever come to you and ask about setting up the lights and the barriers? Because on 1 or 2 of these I've come across, they're a bit hairy because there's not enough advance notice, or there's 2 or 3 in fairly quick succession, which seems to add a lot of frustration to drivers because of the complete tailback to get through. Thank you.
Yeah, as a road safety partnership, we don't often get consulted, but we have a dedicated streetworks team with local people on the ground, and when utility companies or ourselves want to do it, they have to go through the streetworks team for them to check, and then there's a standard to signing as well, and standards in advanced warning. But yeah, no, we don't get involved as such in that. It's more the streetworks department.
Dick.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, something you said there sort of prompted me to ask a question about patterns, because I'm dealing with a case at the moment about a rather nasty collision. And I just want to ask, you will look for patterns where there are collisions and tumbles and things going wrong. We don't rely on those heavily to make decisions about highways. I know that it will be, there'll be a lot of discussion around it. But there will be hotspots, I'm assuming, around the city and the county where these patterns are occurring. How do you go about addressing that, and what is the length of time to get something done about that? Because I can think of various roadways actually where things should be done, funding isn't there, Highways England, all that sort of thing. So there's all sorts of things, I know, behind all of that. But the patterns of this is interesting. I would like to know a bit more about that, if that's possible, where those patterns are located and where we think we know where they are. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good question. So annually we do what we call a cluster run. So that's when we have all the incidents that we have available from the police, and we have the hotspots, a top 20, 30, 40 list. And then we look at them areas to see what we'd like to do there, and then what is feasible are 2 very different things. When you're talking about a major scheme like the Welton roundabout that went in a couple of years ago, that was years and years and years in the making, even though we were getting the collisions very often because of, again, the cost and the planning, etc. But sometimes we can do smaller schemes that are more impactful, like a little bit of signing work. There's one recently that we did at Bourne, where we put yellow-back chevrons on, where we saw the collisions where people just not seeing the bend. So, yeah, smaller schemes we can do quicker, but yeah, the bigger ones, everyone knows the hotspots, case to top, them sort of ones take a lot longer in planning and then getting the money to actually complete the scheme.
I think some of us will have seen the news report last night with our executive councillor on the A1, and while they were filming the dangerous crossings on the A1, there was an accident actually at one of the places. I know that's not in our remit because it's a national road, but it just goes to show that there are clusters, doesn't it? Right, let's crack on. Page 102 to 103 is volunteering. Any questions? sorry, Lee, we've no questions for you then. Thank you for coming. So that concludes the discussion on that section, and I propose that we've reviewed the report, satisfied with the level performance for Q4, and we agree the 24-25 public protection and community service level performance indicators and targets as shown in Appendix A. Could you all show, please? Thank you. Right, let's crack on. Item 11, the work programme. Simon.
Thank you, Chairman. No changes to the written work programme that's been issued with the agenda, but we will need to take account of the item that was mentioned under fire and rescue about the National Report on High-Risk Premises, perhaps to be timetabled at a later meeting, as was suggested. And there's one activity, which is the a visit to the Waddington Training Centre, which we also need to programme in as well. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. If that visit can come, and then the actual item, the update on the training centre be included after the visit. Yeah, thank you. I now have... Sorry, who was that, Mike?
Sorry to interrupt again. Regarding our visit to the training centre, I wonder whether it'd be advisable to offer it out to all councillors, because I'm sure they'd find it very interesting. I did a short trip 2 years ago, and it was spectacular. It involved all aspects that went on there, and my education was manifoldly increased, and I came away very satisfied, and I think maybe more councillors should go.
Thank you. Mark, is there a limit on how many people can visit at one time?
No, not at all. And as Councillor Clark has rightly said, we've done it periodically where we can open this up to all councillors, and absolutely we can put on multiple dates to suit people's attendance. So yeah, we're happy to accommodate for that.
I mean, I think priority for people on this committee, but certainly to open it up. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon. Right. Well, we're on to item 12. I have a pecuniary interest in item 12, so I have got to leave now and return when you go to item 13. So Jackie is going to be in the chair for this.
Thank you very much. Okay, if we go on to, we are now going to sit as a Crime and Disorder Scrutiny Committee under Section 19 of the Police and Justice Act 2006 and move on to item 12. So it's the Antisocial Behaviour Case Review, formerly known as Community Trigger. So this item can be found on pages 121 to 127 of the agenda pack and provides an update on the Antisocial Behaviour Case Review in Lincolnshire. So the actions required, we are required by the committee to review and comment on the detail of the contents of the report, endorse the report, and to commit our continued support in helping the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership raise awareness of the ASB case review and how it can support victims of persistent antisocial behaviour throughout Lincolnshire. So to present the report, I think we've got Lisa Merriman, who's a Community Safety Strategy Coordinator, and Zoe Walters, who's a business manager, Safer Lincolnshire Partnership. And I've had a strict instruction from the chairman to say, can you present the report in about 5 minutes, because we're supposed to have read it, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor. I'll be very brief on my summary then. Just a reminder for everybody that the Antisocial Behaviour Case Review is a statutory requirement within the 2014 ASB Crime and Policing Act. It was formerly known as Community Trigger, but was recently renamed by the government in 2023 as part of their ASB Action Plan. The process itself does remain unchanged, but they did feel it was an opportunity whereby rebranding would provide the means to provide clarity on how the process works, and also try to encourage that promotion of the ASB case review and knowledge and understanding by communities, not within just Lincolnshire, but nationally, as it is recognised that there's still a consistent problem in terms of that level of understanding. I think what's really important to note at this point is that the ASB Action Plan was put in place by the previous government, and we are hoping that the current government will continue efforts to obviously promote this particular area of business. So I attended Scrutiny in July last year to provide an input to committee members on the ASB case review process with the aim to improve understanding and provide sufficient knowledge to support promoting it across the county. And during that time, members were very kind in terms of offering some opportunities around how we can further that promotion, particularly within the county. One area was particularly around putting information on the ASB closure letters. This was put to the ASB core priority group, particularly to our district council and housing providers, to see whether this was something they could implement. Now, interestingly, from those discussions, we found that quite a number of them don't actually issue letters on closure, and they actually do it verbally. However, when they do issue it verbally, they do obviously inform them of their right to request an ASB case review if they feel that their case hasn't been dealt with appropriately or managed appropriately, and that they think that there's more that can be done to resolve the problem. Interestingly from that, Boston Borough Council and the East Lindsey District Council do issue letters, and they have actually taken on board that comment and now do include information on the ASB case review in those closure letters. The second suggestion was to increase communication and engagement amongst professionals as well as the public. So information on the ASB case review has now been published by several district councils in various newsletters and briefings. In addition to this, some wider publicity has been undertaken, sharing at the Festival of Rescue at Lincoln Castle, hosted by Fire and Rescue, and also a county-wide ASB campaign delivered by Lincolnshire Police. As a community safety partnership, we have also now put more information on our website through the Lincolnshire County Council website, and also a link to a short video which also then explains the process. The same information has also been replicated on the Police and Crime Commissioner's website, which was previously absent. So during my previous report, I also explained that we conduct a 6-month review of the ASB case review policy, and that was because it was a new policy and we felt that 6 months rather than waiting 12 months would be appropriate. This has been done. It did result in a few minor amendments, mainly just around clarity and timescales, but overall we were really pleased in terms of how it was operating. We also have since then introduced 8 independent chairs across the county to lead the review meetings, and it's really important that in terms of having those independent chairs to provide a fair review for our victims. It isn't a mandatory requirement, but it is outlined as best practice, which is why we followed it. So in January 2024, the ASB Help published a report on the ASB case review. ASB Help are a national charity that provide support and guidance to victims of antisocial behaviour, but also to ASB practitioners. Overall, they found that the ASB case review lacks consistency both across England and Wales, and is sometimes used as a tick box exercise. The report highlighted key findings and noted 4 recommendations, and I'm pleased to say, benchmarking against ourselves against those recommendations, we're really in a positive position because we're already meeting them. In terms of ASB case review data, I've obviously provided it in the report, so I won't go through that at this moment in time, but in terms of the observations, there has been an increase in the number of case review applications from the previous quarter. And in terms of reported antisocial behaviour, that is relatively unchanged. So in terms of, obviously, we're no higher in terms of the number of incidents of antisocial behaviour reported, but we are slowly increasing those applications that are coming in, which again, I see as really positive progress. Majority of case reviews taken place in Boston East Lindsey. One could argue maybe that's because of what they've implemented in terms of having that information on their closure letters, but it's obviously quite difficult to say at this stage. The same number of case review panels have actually taken place, but they have resulted in more recommendations. So in terms of the process itself, the establishment of the independent chairs, I think, is really offering the opportunity whereby we can have some really good problem solving. The independent leads also have an opportunity to bring a fresh pair of eyes to a case with that knowledge and understanding of antisocial behaviour legislation. So in terms of the types of cases coming to the case review, it's generally related to noise nuisance, neighbour disputes and mental health. This is feedback from the ASBRAC coordinators and chairs directly, and this would actually fall in line with antisocial behaviour figures in terms of the majority being inconsiderate behaviour followed by nuisance neighbours. In terms of recommendations, they vary quite considerably, from housing-related tenancies to referrals to issuing of community protection notices. That's one of the antisocial behaviour powers and tools. Installation of noise equipment, increased police patrols, leaflet drops and mediation. It is felt that the process does raise the expectations of victims, and unfortunately this is where agencies then often fall short, because their expectations can be quite unrealistic. Particularly in relation to how quickly actions and referrals and mechanisms can be put into place. But it is something that we really, really do want to work on to improve, because ultimately we do want victims to come away with a satisfactory outcome. So in concluding, whilst the ASB case reviews applications do continue to be low in comparison to the levels of antisocial behaviour incidents, positive progress is being made. The process will continue to be reviewed annually, and that's in line with all our joint policies and procedures that we have in place as a core priority group. We will continue to make efforts to promote it across the county, not just as a tool for victims, but also as an opportunity for professionals to review how we work and take some learning and best practice. And what we ask, obviously, of the committee is to their continued support in helping raising that awareness amongst their communities. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much for that. Do we have any questions, please? Nick, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for the report. Thank you, Chair. I actually find this report very worrying and not very reassuring with the stats that are provided and various things that are within it. You've mentioned quite a lot. You've already said that victims feel it's just a tick box exercise, and I find that comment within a report is, very reflective of residents and how they're having to cope with antisocial behaviour. I'm very much aware of how people have to cope with antisocial behaviour within my own division, which is St Giles. So it's not surprising that I found it rather worrying. So when I was looking at the stats today, so I just need some clarification from you, Lisa, if you don't mind. There were 19 cases sort of reported, 12 of which did not meet the criteria. 6 were carried out and 6 recommendations made. Now, I know that not all of those have completed the cycle, as it were, but the majority of them are. So what I did was, because I keep all my papers, I went back to the last paper from last year, which was on the 27th of July, and we had 12 applications, 6 were not met, 4 were carried out, which meant that 2 had recommendations and 2 were scheduled but hadn't been carried out, so there was 4. So for me, that's an increase of 2 over the whole year of these ASB reports being carried out, and that to me does not reflect an increase or a policy working well for people. The design of it, I don't think, is intended to help victims at all, because you've got to have 3 or more qualifying complaints within a 6-month period. So what I want to ask you is what is a qualifying complaint? Because people are going to get sick to death of doing it over a period of time. They're just going to lose interest and say, nobody's going to bother, nobody's going to do anything, nobody's going to help me, I'm going to have to put up with this. So I feel that people are falling away from that. And I would like to know, the training for it's great that we've got new boards and new people who are taking this on and trying to deal with it. But what is the training for that? And also, I want to draw members to the note that's at the bottom of page 125. I'll read it to you. I'll just get to it. Which I thought was really, for me, it kind of worried me. The ASB figures provided are Lincolnshire Police reported incidents only, due to there being no mechanism to include information from local authorities or social housing providers. This is a national issue. You have actually touched on that, but are we just looking at police figures? If so, how are we able to scrutinise that? And what are these panels looking at? If we're only getting ASB figures provided by Lincolnshire Police, what are the panels looking at? How are we able to scrutinise properly if we haven't got all of the information that maybe the panel has? So for me, that doesn't feel as though it's working properly. It doesn't feel as though there's been a lot of improvement. It feels like a tick box exercise when I'm reading it, and I don't feel that that is a good way to present information to us for continued support without additional input from us. You know, it's just too much. I don't feel that this is working at all. I'm not comfortable with it. And the conclusion is using words to say that we're doing very well, we're using best practice, and all this, that, and the other. So I'm not comfortable with it at all. I don't feel that this is working. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. So first and foremost, I just want to start off with the qualifying complaint. So basically, it's an incident that's been reported to either the council, the police, or the registered housing provider within 30 days of it taking place. So if the incident took place 2 months ago, then it wouldn't be a qualifying complaint. When a victim submits an application for an ASB case review, that goes to one of the district council's single points of contact, and it's their job to then complete or to circulate partner agency forms, and they go out to the housing providers, the police, and look within their local authority to establish what incidents have taken place within those specified timescales to see whether it has met the threshold, which is those 3 qualifying complaints. So when you talk about, and obviously wanted to note in there around that all antisocial behaviour that we look at across the county is based on police figures as we stand. It's not just related to the ASB case review. It's something that has been a huge challenge since I became imposed and beyond. And again, not that it's an excuse, it is a national problem as well, and it is detailed within the ASB help report that I have linked to this report as well. But what we want to try and ensure is that that's only going to be looking at the comparative incident data. So I appreciate, we know that there are far more antisocial behaviour incidents than what is recorded by the police. I think nationally, last year, I think it was 1 million. And according to statistics, we think that's probably double. But the problem that we have is that we're working with multiple agencies that operate on all different systems that record incidents in a different way to try and collate them and put them into one hub and have a real true understanding of what antisocial behaviour looks like is hugely challenging. It covers so many different areas of activity to try and bring it all together is huge. So when we look at the actual ASB case review process, we aren't mitigating the fact that someone has reported incidents to the police and we're only going to focus on those incidents that have been reported to the police. We will look beyond that and ensure that they, we are looking at the information that has been recorded elsewhere. Ultimately, if we didn't, we were going back in time to the pre-Fiona Pilkington days where she reported multiple incidents of antisocial behaviour to lots of different organisations that were never pulled together and they were and never dealt with collectively rather than obviously silo as they were, which resulted obviously in devastating consequences. ASB case review as a process is really nationally, and again, we are trying to do our best within Lincolnshire. As a core priority group, I have it on the agenda at every single meeting. I push and push and push. We need to promote it. We need to ensure that we're having it in our newsletters, we're having it online, we're having it held at any events that we take place to try and encourage people to use it. Again, there is still that stigma and dissatisfaction generally around antisocial behaviour. The level of underreporting, we won't do anything about it, why do I bother? And it's a perception that we really, really do want to change. Moving forward, we are looking to try and look at alternative ways to try and get messages out to communities. So we're looking at, animations, but not just animations that kind of are faced with towards adults, but also to children, young people in schools. We've just delivered a survey amongst pupils in all schools across the county to get their understanding of what they think antisocial behaviour is and what actually affects them. And we've also then got that in line with, you may have seen recently in the County Views, another survey that we're putting out there to try and get an understanding of what people think. And interestingly, we have had the first set of results come through, and that concern around underreporting comes through very, very clear. So we're working against something that has a multitude of factors involved. And from where we were 12 months ago, positively, we are promoting it. Yes, we need to do more, and we need to think of better ways to do it, but it's not just about promoting the ASB case review. It's much wider and broader than that. It's about improving confidence in people reporting in the first place. Your question regards to the independent chairs, they have undergone training which was actually delivered by ASB Help, the national charity that obviously provides that support to victims, and are a lead for the ASB case review, as you would have seen in the report I attached. So we do try to equip them the best we can to ensure that they are delivering these panels appropriately, to ensure that, you know, we do get those positive results. And again, like I said in my initial presentation, there is work to do around that expectations, and in terms of trying to get those positive outcomes and for victims to go away satisfied with that outcome. And it's not, you know, work continues. Just because we've got to where we are now doesn't mean it stops. Like I say, it continues to be an agenda on the ASB CPG. There's also been some discussions around the delivery of the ASB case review through the County Council as part of the new, well, the ASB funding that the Council have provided. So we are trying to do more. But it's not just as simple as the ASB case review process that's part of it. But I do appreciate your comments and welcome them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mike Clark, please.
Thank you, Chairman. On the stats and the data that you collate regarding the victims, do we regularly speak to them? Because obviously I know from past histories that the situation goes on and then it starts to affect the victim more and more because they're getting no result. So it could be a mental health issue that's created for the victim. So do we have that data available so when there's a review that the independent officer can take that in as an assessment and push one way or the other to get a resolve on the issue?
Yes, they do. So as part of the actual convening the panel, when the single point of contact collates all the information from the police, the housing provider and the district council, they'll look at the circumstances. If it involves substance misuse, if it involves mental health, individuals from those organisations will be invited to attend that panel to form part of the discussion, part of the decision making and part of obviously that solution.
And on your reviews with the independent person, are there a number of organisations there together, or do you just rely on you passing on the information?
No, they all get together. They all convene together as a panel. Yeah. So anybody that would be involved in the case will be invited to attend the panel and form part of the discussion and the problem solving that comes from that. Yeah.
Thank you. I've got a couple of questions. There's a drive in West Lindsey at the moment. Our community police inspector is desperately calling for everybody to report any antisocial incident, so antisocial behaviour incident, so that he can get a handle on what's actually happening. And I've just written about it in an article this week, so very much on the same side there. One thing that really worries me is that I didn't know about these reviews until 2 months ago. I've been a councillor since 2007. And that is the first time I've ever heard about them. And that's when I had a very difficult case in my division where a lady was being subjected to all sorts of unpleasant behaviours. She'd been to this person, she'd been to that person, this organisation, that organisation. And in the end, she ran out of organisations. And I heard about it and got in touch. And I talked to Martin Parker here, who told me and sent me the form for antisocial behaviour. And I talked to the police, and they were very helpful, and they did some investigating. But the fact of the matter is, that will need to go to a review. And it worries me that if I didn't know about it, I mean, if the information had been there, I would have read it. How many other councillors don't know about it? How many people out there don't know that such a thing as an antisocial behaviour review exists? And I share your concern, not so much about the quality of the work that's being done or anything like that, but the fact that how many of us actually know about it as a process? If all councillors were told about this and were given training on it, would the number of reviews suddenly shoot up? And, you know, because what this gives us, as community representatives, an opportunity for a little bit of cohesion to actually bring the organisations together. And I share your concern. It's like herding kittens, trying to get organisations together for something like this. But they do have to get together. And there is a process. So I think we do need to have some sort of action or called for to make sure that all councillors are made properly aware of the process of antisocial behaviour reviews, so that we can... Sorry, I'll just come back to you, Nick, before just one more thing. And when that happens, when push comes to shove and somebody is needing one of these reviews, who actually is it that goes out and helps these people to fill in the forms? Because often these are very vulnerable people. It's not an easy form. And who actually actions this? I think we need to pin this down a bit tighter. I do share your concerns. Nick, you wanted to come back.
Thank you, Chair, for your indulgence. And yeah, thank you, Lisa. This is no reflection of the work that officers here are trying to carry out. And I absolutely understand what you must be facing with it. But actually, I was a councillor. I've not been a councillor, obviously, as long as you. But I brought this up to this meeting a couple of years ago when Councillor Pepper was the chair. And I'd spotted community trigger that was being spoken about in the media. And so I asked for it to come here. And so when it came here, it came last time with a case review. And I have felt that it is just kind of, there's not a lot of work going on. Or if there is a lot of work going on, we're not seeing it. I had to ask about it, and like you, I wasn't aware of it. And then I looked at the process and thought, gosh, you know, in comparison to the difficulties that are within my place of work, this doesn't look as though it's effective. And why isn't it effective? What are we doing about it? Because, you know, as a county council and as a county councillor, I don't feel confident about putting my hand up saying that this is good and it's going to protect the public, it's going to protect people where I live, because I know. I mean, no ASB, nothing for Lincoln. I mean, that cannot be right. Those figures just don't look right. My instincts are to just not go with this at all, and it needs re-looking at, tightening down, as Councillor Brockway said, and also to really, really look at the people that we are representing, because I don't feel that I can represent them properly by saying, yes, we're doing everything we can, when it feels to me, reading this report, that that's not the case. We've seen today the wonderful partnerships that we have and the people that we speak to and the working together. That's not coming across here at all. It just isn't there for me. And the stats are... they're not right. They're not right for the figures for our county, and it's rural, it's difficult, but the whole thing just does not feel comfortable for me. So I'm minded actually not to support it, but I know that without that you need to do this work, and I would want to see significant improvements in the way this is reported, how it comes back to committee, the information around it, the fact that it's got to be so much easier for residents to be able to feel comfortable reporting this, because ASB is common, right, like you say, right across the country. It's not just Lincolnshire. It's huge and it's complex. But I represent a certain group of people who suffer with a lot of ASB. It's around, there are hotspots within it. Some are great, but there are hotspots. And I would be doing them a disservice if I said, yeah, this is great, and actually I know it doesn't feel right. So I am kind of in a quandary there. Thank you, Chair.
William?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think, and I'm hearing what's being said, and I think the approach to ASB varies greatly at district levels. I'm an East Lindsey District Councillor. I'm on the executive. I'm responsible for housing and communities. So I'm very much involved in ASB case reviews at our district level. And I think the report does reflect that at East Lindsey, Boston Borough and South Holland, in our sub-region, we work as one with regard to this kind of thing. And we are, I think, much more informed at our district level than we are here at County Council. I get that. And we really take a multi-agency approach. So we have an ASB officer at each of our 3 districts. We have a very, very proactive one in East Lindsey District Council. And we have multi-agency meetings to combat the antisocial behaviour that's happening in certain areas. So, for instance, we have a hotspot, say, in Horncastle 3 years ago when I became the county councillor, and I was also the district councillor, but not for Horncastle, for areas around Horncastle. I knew there was issues. So we brought together a number of agencies. We started multi-agency meetings in Horncastle. They happened once every 6 months. And we had police, we had fire and rescue, we had Platform Housing Group because they had the largest share of social housing in Horncastle, and there were some hotspot areas on some of their housing estates. And we brought the town council involved, we brought the district councillors involved, and we worked together. So we have a much more of a multi-agency approach to these meetings to solve the antisocial behaviour before it ever escalates. But then if there is a case review, we're all involved in that case review. So at a district level, we are far more involved than we are at a county level. And so at a county level, perhaps we need to know more about that, because at a district level, it is working.
That's actually very good news. Did you want to comment, Lisa?
Yes, thank you very much for that, Councillor. Yeah, I agree that the operation of the district councils across the county, it does create problems in terms of the processes that are followed. And as you say, within East Lindsey, Boston and South Holland, they've got a relatively good setup. They've got an extremely good single point of contact for their ASB case reviews. I think what certainly I'll be taking away from this is going back to the core priority groups to look at exactly what we can do. And again, not just about the ASB case review process, because I think actually the process itself can work very, very well. It's just in terms of ensuring that consistency across the county. Just to pick up on the comment around the accessing how to apply, support applying, we do offer that. So ultimately there's an opportunity to apply online, but if it's not got feasibility to do that, you can do it over the phone, or an officer can come and complete that form with you. So there are options available to people who feel that whatever most appropriate form would be suitable to them. But I also think that this fits into that wider piece of work and that project that we are doing around the county-wide LCC ASB funding. And like I say, I'll be taking this back to the ASB core priority group to see what we can do more around improving that confidence in reporting initially, because I think that's where it starts. And then subsequently making sure as part of that people then do feel confident to put an application in for that ASB case review, knowing that the best will be done. It may never be the outcome that they want, because of whether it be legalities or what, but they know that they've gone into it and everybody has looked at it fairly, and you know that they know that their case, you know, everything has possibly been done to try and resolve it. So thank you very much, and I do very much welcome your feedback.
Okay, thank you. So thank you for that. I think it's very important, you know, people can go online and things, but they've got to know that such a thing as a case review exists. So it's that bit of communication we need. Yeah, okay, just very briefly.
Sorry. We have, like I say, as part of the promotions, I very much specifically push through the districts to send the briefings out to their councillors. So my request was for all district councils to submit information around the ASB case review to all of their councillors as part of my request from the ASB CPG, so that you were aware and you were informed.
I'm going to have to tighten this down in a minute. Nick?
Thank you for your indulgence. I'm really sorry. So City Council haven't reported that to me. That would be my district council. It could be an oversight. I know that you put in there about business cards. That would be great if we could get those out to city councillors and to county councillors, so that we can feed them out quickly, because that will provide confidence. So that's something that's a quick win for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, it's important too, because of course not all county councillors are district councillors. So if we can shut it down now, okay, thanks. Now what we've got, so we've got the actions required. Now I hear what you're saying about not supporting. I think I can think of a way forward here. So the actions required are to review and comment on the detail of the contents of the report. We've done that well and thoroughly. Number 2, it says endorse the report and commit their continued support. Now, if people are not happy that we're ready to endorse the report yet, if I propose that we take those 4 words out, endorse the report and take those 4 words out and start the second action with commit their continued support in helping the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership raise awareness of the ASB case review and how it can support victims of persistent antisocial behaviour throughout Lincolnshire. Would you be comfortable with that? Is that something I can do? Would Mick, if I propose that, are members happy? Yes? Okay, thank you. So can we take those 4 words out, please? And then that way we can support your report and we can go forward. Now, thank you very much for that. Yes, do you want to get the chairman? Thank you very much. That was a very robust, it was very hard on you, but I thought very well done. And that is absolutely what scrutiny is. Scrutiny at its finest. Well done, everybody. They're going to go away and breathe now, Chairman. Thank you.
Sounds like I've missed the most exciting bit. I'll just get my bearings where we are. Right. So, we've done the work programme. Obviously, I didn't say, I don't think, earlier that we were sitting as the Crime and Disorder Partnership. Oh, you did. Oh, you did. Oh, that's fine. I just wanted to make sure we hadn't missed anything out. Right. So we're on the final item now, which is the item 13, drug and alcohol misuse, on pages 129 to 135. Presenting a summary of the work related to drug and alcohol misuse by the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership during 23-24 and to highlight some priorities for the coming year. The actions required are to review the contents of the report and seek assurance on the preventative work of the Drugs and Alcohol Core Priority Group to reduce drug and alcohol related harm. So we're going to have this presented by Gemma and Lucy. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll start us off and then Gemma is going to share some of the specifics about our work. So the Lincolnshire Drug and Alcohol Partnership, which also sits as the Drug and Alcohol Core Priority Group, it's a strategic group with a focus on, as we've said, preventing drug and alcohol related harm, chaired by Derek Ward, who's our Director of Public Health. As well as reporting to the strategy board of the Safer Lincolnshire Partnership, we also report directly to central government, to the Joint Combating Drugs Unit, which is a cross-government department unit responsible for delivering the national drug strategy From Harm to Hope. Last year at this committee, we introduced the partnership that had been operating at that point for about a year. And so this year, we're going to provide a key update on some activities. And also, I'll provide a short update on the recent launch of our new drug and alcohol treatment provider, because I think that's, although it doesn't sit under the strategy board, I think it's really important for the context because they're such a key stakeholder in our strategic work. The Drug and Alcohol Partnership itself has representatives from more than a dozen organisations, including the full range of criminal justice partners and also health partners, district councils and the community and voluntary sector. And just before I hand over to Gemma to talk about some of the projects we've delivered working together over the last year, I'll just share that brief update on our specialist drug and alcohol treatment service as well. So as many around the room will be aware, we launched a new specialist drug and alcohol treatment service on the 1st of April, known as the Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership. And it's an alliance between 3 organisations, Turning Point, who are a national drug and alcohol treatment provider, Framework, who were already operating in the local area, providing, for example, housing-related support, and Double Impact, who are a lived experience recovery organisation. Again, Double Impact have been in Lincolnshire since 2016, providing support for drug and alcohol recovery. The service provides individual level support and group support to children, to young people, and to adults of all ages who have drug and or alcohol issues. We also do a lot of prevention work, for example, with schools. The contract includes lots of different elements. For example, our county-wide needle and syringe programme, which is really important for harm reduction. And we also provide funding for placements at residential detox and for residential rehabilitation. The new service, it builds on what we had before, but it offers enhancements around some real key areas of priority for us. So there is something about visible recovery and making that visible recovery people more aware of that across the county, and also really importantly around dual diagnosis. So for people who have both drug and alcohol related problems and also co-occurring serious mental ill health, and we work very closely with LPFT to do that. Just very briefly before I hand over to Gemma, we're currently supporting more than 3,300 people across the county. And now that the provider is established in Lincolnshire, we are working closely together to make sure that we step up our work around all age prevention, making sure referral pathways are operating smoothly and effectively, and enhancing support for people with complex drug and alcohol and wider healthcare needs. I'll just hand over to Gemma for a brief update on some key activities.
Thank you, Lucy. So over the last year, there's been a lot of work put in, definitely since the inception of the Drug and Alcohol CPG. We've worked really hard to embed links with all processes of the criminal justice arm of the new treatment and recovery service, the service before, and moving that into the Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership work too, to support and divert individuals experiencing drug and alcohol misuse issues away from criminal justice activity and custody. Still on the theme of criminal justice and with the police, we're now in a position to issue naloxone, for those who aren't familiar with that, which is a life-saving antidote to opioid overdose. That will be issued to Lincolnshire police officers who wish to carry that. It will be voluntary, but we do hope to encourage all officers to carry that. The work with the police has been really good over the last year. We've really worked with the individuals within the police to sort of fortify our links there, and the targeting county lines and cuckooing activity is definitely one of those key activities there. Fortify has been launched, which is an operation to support individuals and communities where cuckooing is being experienced and where individuals may be vulnerable to such practices. And we continue to work with the treatment provider, with probation, around community sentence treatment requirements. So the numbers of community sentence treatment requirements being issued in action within Lincolnshire are increasing. We hope to continue to develop this work stream collaboratively with LPFT, the Specialist Drug and Alcohol Treatment Service, and the Probation Service. Since its launch in Q2 of 22-24, MHTRs have been rolled out across the county, which are mental health treatment requirements. They are now a sentencing option for the courts, and data from that is reported to a strategic steering group routinely and incorporated into a national evaluation framework. Another stream of work that we're very proud of developing within Lincolnshire is the drug and alcohol related death panel. That has now been launched and will allow for considerations around drug and alcohol related deaths in Lincolnshire. That will help us to be able to look at how to prevent future deaths and to be able to share learning from cases with partners to allow for learning and change implementation. As previously mentioned, we do have a prevention plan as well. That is one of our key priorities, to look at how we can educate, inform, offer guidance and support to individuals around the harms that substances can cause, and to help build young people's awareness and resilience of harms caused by substances. So our objectives around that will be to share evidence-based, accurate information on harm reduction to members of the public that may be unaware of some substance types, develop primary prevention information for adults that may be unaware of the risks caused by substances, and support those who use substances to minimise harms. Sorry, just lost my train of thought there. Also, we're keen to develop work in areas that may not ordinarily seem to have links with drugs and alcohol. So a good example of this, and moving on from what was spoke about earlier with fire and rescue, we are looking at how we can help support the home fire safety checks, using existing procedures within the treatment service and mechanisms there to inform vulnerable service users within the treatment service of fire safety, and to help alert those within fire and rescue of these people who may be vulnerable but wouldn't ordinarily have appeared on their radar. And we hope to do that by helping to embed some of the questions within the assessment with the Lincolnshire Recovery Partnership, and also help direct fire and rescue to those people at the correct addresses. So just in summary, some of our key priorities: to produce an effective Lincolnshire drug and alcohol strategy which meets the needs of Lincolnshire residents and visitors as a whole and reflects national guidance in supporting those with drug and alcohol misuse issues. So that will be incorporating all that Lucy mentioned earlier. We'll replace the previous strategy, which expires in 2025, and away from being just criminal justice focused to more of a wide range, all-encompassing strategy. We hope to continue to build pathways to enable individuals and professionals to refer into treatment services and receive specialist support and advice. And hope to do that at every reachable moment, and also to continue to develop the Lincolnshire Drug and Alcohol Related Death Panel and process, and to begin to learn from that evidence and how we can help future generations within our county. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, any questions? Nick, I thought you'd be first.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, thank you for your indulgence, Lisa. I'm so sorry. I hope you're all right. Hope you're all right. It's scrutiny, and please don't take it personally. But anyway, yes, drug and alcohol. So, spent a brilliant visit there, Lucy, didn't we, at Newland Centre, Mike and I actually, and saw the magnificent work that's carried out there, and I'm so delighted that you've got this funding. I just want to ask, it's a 9-year contract. Does it start from the 1st of April 2024, or does it go back? Is it backwards prior to that date?
It started on the 1st of April 24, yeah. So it's
Brilliant.
5 plus 2 plus 2.
5 plus 2 plus 2, right. So does this funding support those who've had drug and alcohol misuse, so the people that you've been supporting prior to that? Does this funding also encompass those people?
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. Right. And the other thing I want to ask you, on page 132, paragraph 2, it states there will be an increased clinical capacity and physical for physical health concerns like blood-borne viruses, liver screening. I was going to ask about pancreatic issues as well, because a lot of this is additional work, isn't it? It's quite intense, and can the local health authority will they be able to cope with that increased capacity? Where are you going to find it from? And finally, my final question to you around that would be, if patients need treatment, do they have to have it in Lincoln? Can they be sent out to another hospital, neighbouring hospital like Nottingham, for instance, for treatment? Will that cover it? Thank you.
So you're absolutely right. So within the new service, we've got increased capacity across a number of work areas, but increased clinical capacity. So we have additional nurses in the service, and also some additional clinical psychiatrist capacity. They are the jobs that are more difficult to recruit to, absolutely. There is a national shortage, although I think we say that just about every area of practice. However, we are working collaboratively with the wider NHS in Lincolnshire to see how we can fill some of those roles collaboratively. We have new technology we've got technology within the new service, kind of testing that we can do scans that we've never been able to do before, and obviously that may we would expect that to lead to identification of some clients who will need onward referral into the NHS. But hopefully what that should do over time is identify people with much earlier stage impacted livers, and it will reduce the burden of people with more advanced liver disease who are needing to be treated on the NHS in the future. So over time, we will see hopefully a shift in terms of the complexity of health needs of those patients within our NHS. At the point that someone needs to be referred in, they can choose where they'd like to go. So if they live kind of on the coast, really near to Grimsby, they can go up there, they could go to Nottingham. So there's an element of choice as when that person comes to that point of needing NHS care, they can work with the system that's most convenient for them.
Okay, William.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My question is around those people who unfortunately are rough sleeping. And sadly, across our county, we have quite a number of people rough sleeping, and numbers always increase considerably at this time of the year. I think in East Lindsey, I had verified 23 people rough sleeping last week, but there's probably considerably more than that who are sofa surfing, and it's very, very sad. And our rough sleeping team are coming across people on a very regular basis now who clearly have alcohol and drugs misuse issues and problems, and that's just creating violence with those people, and they're just not wanting to engage. And of course, usual sleepers won't go to clinics, and so it's very difficult to have a referral pathway for people in this very sad situation. So what options are open to them? Because I know my teams are really struggling, especially at this moment in time, because there are such high numbers on the streets, particularly along the coastal strip, who are becoming violent because clearly they have got alcohol and drugs issues.
Yeah, so we have a specialist outreach team within the service who work with rough sleepers and also those at risk of rough sleeping. So, for example, people who are living in vulnerable circumstances, maybe sofa surfing. So I'm more than happy to pick up a conversation outside. If it would be helpful for me to make sure we've got the right link into the service, we can make sure that that the teams out in East Lindsey are able to work with the specialist offer that we've got available.
That would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before Mike comes in, can I just ask you about cuckooing? I mean, it's a funny word, and I can understand why that word's been used, but it sounds like a horrible, horrible thing that's going on. How do the police try and stop it? I mean, it says here something. It says about the police taking covert. I can't remember. I'm not looking. Action. What can we do to stop it? Because it's horrible.
Yes, it's something that's nationally has become a significant problem. And within Lincolnshire, Op Fortify, what they've been doing is when somebody has been identified as being a victim of cuckooing, they will put a multi-agency approach around that, and they will try and get them as much support that they need to try and stop that from happening again, or find out the reasons why they were so vulnerable to have been cuckooed in the first place. Then they will go out to, if that person lives in a block of flats, they will go so many up, so many out, inform all of those residents that cuckooing is happening in that area, what that looks like, how to report it, and how to stop them being vulnerable of that as well. Raising awareness of that, any events that we have, we've definitely noticed that lots of people who are susceptible to cuckooing are involved in drugs and alcohol, and so the drug and alcohol service are also aware of that. If they do go out and do visits, they will try and be aware of that and help move that person away from that activity. But it's definitely something that's definitely is on people's radar a bit more than it was, say, 6 months ago, a year ago. So we are moving in the right direction. But it's just raising that awareness, I think, just to start with, so that people can be aware that it is happening, and it's unfortunately happening in many different locations.
For the benefit of anybody who may be watching or listening, can you just tell them what to look out for? What is cuckooing, just so that there's no misunderstanding?
Yes, of course. So cuckooing is when people usually maybe unknown to them, or people, maybe drug dealers, for example, will go to somebody's property and take over that property, just like a cuckoo would, take over somebody else's property and use that area and use that location to maybe commit illegal activity, or may create some antisocial behaviour in that area. They may use that property to conduct legal activity from. So you may see more people attending that address, people at different times of the day, people unknown to that area originally turning up, being violent or in and out the property, when ordinarily there might have just been one person living there on their own. So it's being aware of more traffic to that area, lots of different noises, just make something that's not quite right. So if you're seeing people around in your area that you've not been aware of before, it may be that is what's happening in that area.
And the legitimate resident, they're still there, are they, I assume?
Yeah, it's often potentially adults who've got some vulnerabilities, so they'll effectively befriend them and then use that friendship to take over the property. So it's really very insidious behaviour.
Thank you. I just thought it worth highlighting that, because we can all look out for it, can't we? Mike?
Thank you very much for the report. I'm a bit on stats, so going forward, could we be informed of the numbers that we're dealing with, that we've got, you're dealing with, 20,000 alcohol people, 20,000 drug users, but then we've got 10,000 who've got the combination of both. Because we can then assess the scale of the problem. Obviously, you're well aware of it. And also, in some of the other reports, we get details of the possible cost to the community or to the national health. So that would be useful as well, even if it's an estimate that, through this combination of issues that somebody's got, it's put in tens of thousands of pounds against our services or against the NHS. because I don't think people appreciate the scale of this particular problem, and therefore, because they're not aware of the scale, it's only a minor situation that we've got, and therefore we don't need to worry about it.
Yes, absolutely. When we come back next time, we should have some good detailed information from the new service. I did consider bringing a little bit more today, but conscious it's from a previous provider. But I can tell you that of the just under 3,500 in the service, around about 1,000 are accessing support for alcohol only. For most of the others, it's either opioids or a combination of opioids and alcohol. We have a small number of young people in the service, around about 200. But we'll bring some full numbers next time, and we can also bring some information about outcomes as well. So not just telling you kind of who's in the service, but what some of the impacts of that are, and some information on return on investment. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's the obvious question as well is, how do people get into that situation? Do we know it's a combination of living conditions, or they've been possibly thrown out of their parents' home, and therefore a spiral down and find solace in either the drink or the alcohol? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. I think you just wanted to come back quickly.
Yeah, very, very quickly. Read the issue around cuckooing. It's particularly nasty, and it would be good if we could have information on that. I'm aware of it, dealing with something similar. It creates all sorts of problems, debt, worrying about housing, not being able to move a person, safety. There's all sorts of things that attach to it, and it's very difficult once established to organise and sort out. So that would be really good to have some kind of information around that, I think. Thank you.
Yeah, perhaps we could write a short briefing that could be circulated with some kind of definitions, what we know about it and what to look out for, that then you could all share with your colleagues and contacts as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sitting here, I'm very grateful to you for staying to the end of the meeting, but I do wonder sometimes if we should have the crime and disorder bit first. But I'll have to speak to officers about that, because you always get left till the end, and it's obviously crucial that we thoroughly talk about these things. I think we've finished with questions now, Jackie. Yeah, so I'll propose that the committee have reviewed the report and has been assured on the preventative work of the Drugs and Alcohol Core Priority Group to reduce drug and alcohol-related harm. So if we're all in agreement with that. Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and for staying the course if you've had to wait through the meeting. I'd also like to thank all the officers who've been here today, and particularly Simon and Emily, who've supported this committee so well. Thank you very much. Thank you, Simon, for stepping in. And I'll see most of the people here, I should imagine, in September. So thank you all very much. You can now leave the council chamber.